A billionaire woman stood at a school gate in freezing rain, her $1,000 coat soaked through, waiting for a man who had walked away from her once before. But this time she wasn't leaving until he understood that everything, her empire, her reputation, her perfectly controlled life, meant absolutely nothing compared to what she was about to risk. If you want to know how a woman who had everything learned she had nothing, and how a single father who seemed to have so little taught her what wealth really meant, stay with me until the end of this story. Drop a like, leave a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's begin. The rain came down like nails against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Drake Hotel's grand ballroom, each drop a small percussion note in the orchestrated chaos of Vanessa Hale's annual company gala. October in Chicago was never kind, but tonight the weather had turned vicious, as if the city itself wanted to remind everyone inside that all their money and influence couldn't control a damn thing that mattered. Vanessa stood near the bar, a glass of champagne she hadn't touched growing warm in her hand, and watched her own party like she was observing someone else's life. The room sparkled, literally sparkled. Someone on her events team had gone overboard with the crystal chandeliers and the gold-flecked tablecloths, and now the whole ballroom looked like the inside of a jewelry box. 500 people in tuxedos and gowns, all of them connected to Hale-Tech Industries in some capacity, all of them performing the elaborate dance of corporate networking with practiced grace. She was 30 years old, and she was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixed, the kind that lived in your bones, that made you wonder at odd moments, like right now, surrounded by people who would kill for 5 minutes of her attention, whether any of this had been worth it. "Vanessa, darling, you look absolutely radiant." She turned. Margaret Chen, board member, major investor, professional ass-kisser. Vanessa manufactured a smile that felt like lifting weights. "Margaret, thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it, though I have to say, the weather is absolutely dreadful. I nearly turned back 3 times on the drive over." "But you didn't." "Well, no. One doesn't miss a Vanessa Hale event." Margaret leaned in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I heard a rumor that you're planning to announce the Singapore expansion tonight. Is it true?" Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but something cold moved through her chest. This was the game. Always the game. Information as currency, relationships as transactions, every conversation and negotiation you hadn't agreed to have. "You know I never discuss business at social events, Margaret." "Oh, of course, of course." Margaret's laugh was like wind chimes made of razor blades. "I'll let you get back to mingling, but we should have lunch next week. I have some thoughts about the Q4 projections." Everyone had thoughts about the Q4 projections. Vanessa watched Margaret glide away toward another cluster of important people, already mining for the next piece of valuable gossip, and felt the champagne glass grow heavier in her hand. She set it down on a passing server's tray and moved toward the windows, craving distance from the noise. Chicago spread out below her, 18 floors down, the city lights blurred by rain and her own reflection ghosting back at her from the glass. She looked good, she knew that. The dress had cost $8,000. Deep emerald silk that her stylist had sworn was devastating, whatever that meant. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that suggested effortless elegance, but had taken her stylist 45 minutes to achieve. Diamond earrings that had belonged to her grandmother caught the light every time she moved her head. She looked like success. She looked like power. She looked, she thought with sudden brutal clarity, completely empty. "Excuse me, sorry, just trying to get past." Vanessa stepped aside automatically, then glanced at the man who'd spoken. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair that was slightly too long to be strictly professional and a face that was more interesting than handsome. He wore a standard rental tux that fit him well enough, but clearly wasn't tailored, and he was carrying 2 glasses of wine with the careful concentration of someone who really didn't want to spill on anyone. She didn't recognize him. That alone was noteworthy. Vanessa made it her business to know everyone in her orbit. "Thank you," he said, offering her a brief smile that seemed genuine rather than calculated, and started to move past. "Wait." She didn't know why she said it. "I don't think we've met." He paused, looking mildly surprised to be stopped. "No, probably not. I'm Ethan Cole. I work in analytics." Analytics. She processed that. Hale-Tech had a massive analytics division, hundreds of people she'd never personally interacted with. You're one of Marcus's people? Technically, yes, though I try not to think of myself as anyone's people. The comment could have been insubordinate, but his tone was mild, almost absent-minded, like he was making an observation about the weather rather than pushing back against a billionaire CEO. Vanessa found herself smiling, a real smile this time, not the practiced corporate version. Fair enough. What do you do in analytics, Ethan Cole? Risk assessment, mostly. Pattern recognition. Identifying problems before they become catastrophic. He shifted the wine glasses slightly. Though if I'm being honest, right now I'm mostly trying to deliver these drinks without catastrophe. So if you'll excuse me, who are they for? What? The drinks. Who are they for? He looked at her like she'd asked a strange question, which she supposed she had. One's for Sarah Chen in compliance, the other's for me. We're hiding in the corner by the plant and making bets about how long until someone starts crying in the bathroom. Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time that had happened at one of these events? That's terrible. That's accurate. Sarah's got 45 minutes. I'm betting on 20. So far we're both wrong, which means the pool rolls over. He glanced toward the corner he'd indicated where a woman in a blue dress was indeed standing next to an oversized fern, looking equally uncomfortable with the whole situation. Anyway, Why aren't you working the room? The question stopped him again. He turned back to her, and for the first time she saw something sharp in his eyes, an intelligence that had been hidden under the mild-mannered exterior. Because I don't want to, he said simply. I'm here because attendance is technically mandatory for senior staff, and I needed the free food, but I have exactly zero interest in pretending I care about Marcus's golf game or listening to Brad from Acquisitions explain Bitcoin for the 900th time. Brad doesn't understand Bitcoin. I know. That's what makes it so painful. She should have been offended. This was her event, her company, her carefully orchestrated evening designed to strengthen relationships and build loyalty. Instead, she was fascinated. You're not worried I'll fire you for that attitude? Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and she had the strange sensation of being actually seen, not as CEO Vanessa Hale, but as a person. Are you going to fire me? No. Then I'm not worried. He paused. Look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. This, he gestured vaguely at the ballroom, is your world. I get that. And I'm sure it serves a purpose. It's just not my world. I showed up. I'll stay until it's acceptable to leave, and then I'm going home to my daughter. That's the deal. You have a daughter. I do. She's 6. Her name is Lila, and right now she's with a babysitter who charges extra after 10 p.m., so I'm very aware of the time. There was something in the way he said it, a weight to the words that suggested layers she couldn't see. Vanessa found herself wanting to know more, which was unusual. She didn't typically care about her employees' personal lives beyond what was necessary for management purposes. What does a 6-year-old do at, she glanced at her watch, 9:30 on a Friday night? Sleep, hopefully, though with Lila you never know. She's recently decided she's afraid of the dark, which is new and inconvenient. His expression softened in a way that transformed his whole face. Last night I found her sleeping with every light in her room on and her nightlight pressed against her chest like a teddy bear. Vanessa felt something strange move in her chest. That's adorable and expensive, yes. My electric bill agrees with you. She laughed again. 2 real laughs in 5 minutes. That might be a record for the entire year. You love her very much. It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. More than anything in the world, more than this job, more than career advancement, more than impressing people at parties. He stopped, seemed to reconsider what he was going to say, then settled on, she's everything. The noise of the party seemed very far away suddenly. Vanessa was aware of the rain still hammering against the windows, of the quartet playing something classical and forgettable in the corner, of Margaret Chen's laugh cutting through the conversational buzz like a knife. But all of it felt distant, like she was standing in a bubble with this man who didn't care about her money or her power and loved his daughter more than career advancement. That must be, she paused, searching for the right word. Grounding. It is. It's also terrifying, exhausting, and occasionally disgusting. Last week, she threw up in my car on the way to school and then asked for pancakes. Ethan's smile was wry. But yeah, grounding works too. I don't have that. She didn't know why she said it. The words just came out, honest and unfiltered in a way she never allowed herself to be at these events. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the dress. Kids? Grounding. Purpose. Something that matters more than quarterly earnings and board meetings. She heard herself talking and couldn't seem to stop. I built this company from nothing. I was 23 when I started, 25 when we went public, 28 when Forbes put me on their cover. I've done everything I set out to do, checked every box, exceeded every expectation, and now, she stopped. What the hell was she doing? You didn't confess existential crisis to random employees at corporate events. That wasn't how any of this worked. But Ethan didn't look uncomfortable or calculating. He just looked at her with something that might have been understanding. And now you're standing at your own party wondering why it all feels hollow, he said quietly. Yes. The admission hung between them like a living thing. I'm sorry, Ethan said. And the remarkable thing was, he sounded like he meant it. Not in the performative way people said sorry in business contexts, but genuinely like her pain mattered to him even though they'd just met. Don't be, this is... Vanessa gestured at the ballroom, at the life she'd built. This is what success looks like. I should be grateful. Should is a terrible word. What? Should. It's what other people think you ought to feel or do or be. It's never about what you actually want. He shifted the wine glasses again. Sarah was going to be wondering where he'd gone. I spent a long time living in should. It nearly destroyed me. These days I try to stick to is. What is actually true? What I actually need, what actually matters. He glanced at his watch, and something changed in his face. And what is true right now is that I need to leave. I promised Lila I'd check on her before 10:30, and I have exactly 40 minutes to get home. Of course. Vanessa felt something like disappointment, which was absurd. This was nice, talking to you. Yeah. Ethan smiled, that same genuine smile that seemed completely out of place in this room full of calculated expressions. It was. Thank you for not firing me for insulting your party. Thank you for being honest about my party. He laughed, started to turn away, then paused. For what it's worth. You seem like you're asking the right questions. Most people don't even get that far. They just keep going through the motions until they wake up at 60 and wonder where their life went. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be true. What you do with true is up to you. And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with his 2 glasses of wine, leaving Vanessa standing by the windows feeling like something had shifted in a way she couldn't quite name. She watched him make his way to the corner where Sarah Chen was waiting, saw them exchange the drinks and a few words, saw Sarah laugh at something Ethan said. They looked comfortable together, easy, like people who genuinely liked each other rather than people performing friendship for professional benefit. Vanessa turned back to the window, to her reflection and the rain-blurred city beyond. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out. 3 texts from her assistant about tomorrow's schedule, 2 emails flagged urgent about the Singapore deal, 1 notification that her car was waiting whenever she was ready to leave. She could leave now. This was her party. She could do whatever she wanted. But leaving meant going back to her penthouse in the Gold Coast, to the 2,000 square feet of designer furniture and original art and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a city she'd conquered. It meant another night of eating takeout at her marble kitchen island while reviewing documents, another night of falling asleep to CNBC reruns, another night of waking up at 3 a.m. and wondering why achievement felt so much like emptiness. Or she could stay here, in her jewelry box ballroom, and keep playing the role of Vanessa Hale, tech titan, successful entrepreneur, woman who had it all. Both options felt exhausting. She was about to put her phone away when she saw Ethan again, this time heading for the coat check with Sarah Chen. They were leaving together, laughing about something, and Vanessa felt a strange spike of, what? Jealousy? Curiosity? She didn't even know. On impulse, she pulled up the company directory on her phone and searched for Ethan Cole. Ethan James Cole, age 32. Senior Analyst, Risk Assessment Division, employed at Hale Tech for 7 years. Current salary, $127,000. Education, MBA, from Northwestern, Bachelor's in Mathematics from University of Michigan. Performance reviews, consistently excellent, though noted for refusing promotional opportunities. Reports directly to Marcus Chen, head of analytics. Vanessa scrolled through his file, looking for something she couldn't name. Marital status, widowed. Dependents, 1 daughter, age 6. Emergency contact, Rebecca Cole, sister. Widowed. That one word recontextualized everything. The way he talked about his daughter, the weight in his voice when he mentioned going home, the comment about living in should until it nearly destroyed him. She looked up from her phone just in time to see Ethan and Sarah push through the ballroom doors into the hotel corridor. Through the glass panels, she watched them wait for the elevator, still talking, still comfortable with each other. The elevator arrived, they got in, the doors closed, and Vanessa stood in her beautiful ballroom surrounded by 500 people who would do anything for her attention and felt completely alone. There you are, Marcus Chen materialized at her elbow, slightly drunk, very enthusiastic. I've been looking everywhere for you. There are people who want to talk about the Singapore thing, and Brad's been cornered by someone from the Tribune asking about the acquisition rumors, and I think we need to… Marcus. Vanessa cut him off, her voice sharp enough that he actually stopped talking. Why hasn't Ethan Cole been promoted? Marcus blinked, thrown by the change in subject. What? Ethan? We've offered, multiple times. He turns it down every time. Why? How should I know? The guy's brilliant. Best pattern recognition analyst I've ever seen. Saved our asses on the Meridian account last year, basically rewrote our entire risk assessment protocol, but he refuses to take on more responsibility. Says he can't commit to the hours. Marcus shrugged. It's frustrating, honestly. We could use him at a director level, but he's weirdly stubborn about the work-life balance thing. Work-life balance? Yeah. Leaves at 5 p.m. every single day, never stays late, never comes in on weekends. I get it, he's got the kid, but still, you don't build a career on a 40-hour work week. Vanessa looked at Marcus, successful, ambitious, divorced twice, seeing his own kids every other weekend if the custody agreement allowed, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Maybe he's built something more important than a career, she said quietly. Marcus laughed like she'd made a joke. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, about Singapore, not now, Marcus. But I said not now. She softened it with a smile, the CEO smile that made people back off without feeling dismissed. Tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. Right now I need some air. She left him standing there looking confused and made her way to the terrace. It was technically closed because of the rain, but Vanessa Hale didn't get stopped by velvet ropes. She pushed through the doors and stepped out into the October night. The rain hit her immediately, cold and vicious, soaking through her $8,000 dress in seconds. The terrace was empty, all the heat lamps turned off, the furniture covered in tarps. Chicago spread out before her, indifferent to her wealth or her problems or her sudden need to stand in the rain like an idiot. She tipped her head back and let the water run down her face, washing away the carefully applied makeup, the performance, the mask. When was the last time she'd done something this impractical? This uncontrolled? Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Inside, through the glass doors, she could see her party continuing without her. People networking, drinking, laughing, dancing, all of them playing their parts in the elaborate theater of success. And somewhere in the city below, Ethan Cole was probably getting out of a rideshare, hurrying through the rain to his front door, where a babysitter was waiting and a 6-year-old girl was sleeping with all her lights on. He had said she was everything, his daughter. More than career advancement, more than impressing people at parties. When was the last time Vanessa had been everything to someone? When was the last time someone had been everything to her? The answer came swift and brutal. Never. She'd built an empire, but she'd never built a home. She'd cultivated hundreds of professional relationships, but couldn't name a single friend who'd come over just to watch a movie on a Tuesday night. She'd achieved every goal she'd set for herself and somehow ended up standing alone in the rain at her own party, crying over a conversation with a man she'd known for 15 minutes. This was pathetic. This was beneath her. This was true. Ethan's word. What is actually true? And what was true was that Vanessa Hale was 30 years old, wildly successful, completely miserable, and had no idea how to fix it. She stood in the rain for another 10 minutes until she was soaked through and shivering, until her assistant came looking for her with an umbrella and a concerned expression that was probably more about the dress than Vanessa's well-being. "Miss Hale, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Jennifer. Just needed some air." "You're soaked." "I'm aware." Jennifer held out the umbrella, which was pointless now but seemed to make her feel better. "There are still people who want to speak with you. The mayor's here and someone from the governor's office, and tell them I'll catch up with them later. I'm leaving." "Leaving? But it's only—" "Now, Jennifer, I'm leaving now." To her credit, Jennifer didn't argue, just pulled out her phone and started making arrangements. Within 5 minutes, Vanessa was in the private elevator down to the underground parking garage, wrapped in someone's suit jacket because her coat was apparently in the ballroom coat check and nobody wanted to make her wait for it. Her driver, Michael, took one look at her and wisely said nothing, just held the car door open and handed her a towel from the emergency kit he kept in the trunk. Vanessa climbed into the back of the town car and pulled the privacy screen up before Michael could ask where they were going. Where were they going? Back to the penthouse, she supposed. Back to the empty marble and the designer furniture and the view of a city that looked beautiful from a distance but felt hollow up close. Her phone was still buzzing. She looked at the screen, 17 missed calls, 32 unread texts, 48 emails. All of it urgent. All of it demanding her attention, her decision, her approval. She powered the phone off and dropped it in her purse. Through the rain-streaked window, Chicago slid past in blurs of light and shadow. They passed restaurants with people visible through steamed-up windows, bars with crowds spilling onto sidewalks despite the weather, apartment buildings with lit windows suggesting lives being lived inside. Normal lives, small lives probably by her standards. People who worried about electric bills and babysitter rates and whether to splurge on takeout or cook at home. People like Ethan Cole. She wondered if he'd made it home in time. She wondered if his daughter was still awake, if she'd run to meet him at the door, if he'd scooped her up the way he'd probably done 1,000 times before. She wondered what it felt like to have someone waiting for you like that, someone who didn't care about your net worth or your quarterly projections, someone who just wanted you home. The car pulled up in front of her building on the Gold Coast. The doorman rushed out with an umbrella, but Vanessa was already drenched, so she waved him off and walked straight through the lobby to the private elevator that went directly to her penthouse. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, spotless, perfectly decorated, completely empty. She stood in the entryway dripping on the hardwood floors her designer had special ordered from Italy and felt the weight of the silence press down like a physical thing. This was what she'd worked for. This was the prize. Vanessa walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Lake Michigan and the city beyond. From up here, Chicago looked magical, all lights and possibility. From up here, you couldn't see the loneliness. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and thought about Ethan Cole going home to his daughter. She thought about the way his whole face had changed when he talked about her, the way he'd said, "She's everything," like it was the simplest truth in the world. And she thought about the question he'd asked, "Are you going to fire me?" "No," she'd said, and she'd meant it. But maybe the real question wasn't about firing. Maybe the real question was, what are you going to do with True? Vanessa didn't have an answer. Not yet. But for the first time in a very long time, she wanted to find one. Monday morning came too fast and brought with it the kind of headache that started behind Vanessa's eyes and radiated outward like a slow explosion. She'd slept maybe 3 hours total, spent most of Sunday answering the emails she'd ignored Friday night, and now she was sitting in her office on the 42nd floor of the Hale Tech Tower, trying to focus on the Singapore expansion proposal, while her mind kept drifting to a conversation with a man she barely knew. This was ridiculous. She was Vanessa Hale. She didn't get distracted by random employees. She didn't lose sleep over 15-minute interactions at corporate events. She certainly didn't spend her Sunday night searching the company database for information about someone's work history and performance reviews like some kind of stalker. Except she had done exactly that. Ethan Cole's file was still open on her laptop, buried under 3 other windows so Jennifer wouldn't see it when she came in with the morning briefing. 7 years at Hale Tech. Started as a junior analyst, promoted to senior analyst within 18 months, offered director positions 4 separate times over the next 5 years. Declined all of them. His performance reviews were glowing. Marcus hadn't been exaggerating about his talent, but there was a note in his file from 3 years ago that caught Vanessa's attention. Employee has requested strict adherence to 40-hour work week due to personal circumstances. No overtime, no weekend work, no after-hours availability except in genuine emergencies. Has stated he will resign if these boundaries are not respected. The note was signed by Marcus and countersigned by HR. Someone had actually put it in writing that Ethan Cole would quit rather than work late. Vanessa couldn't imagine that kind of certainty, that kind of clear boundary between work and everything else. Her whole life was work. Even when she wasn't in the office, she was thinking about work, strategizing about work, dreaming about work. The idea of drawing a line and saying this far and no further felt foreign, almost dangerous, but also, she had to admit, kind of appealing. Ms. Hale? Jennifer appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, looking worried. I have the morning briefing ready, but Marcus Chen is here. He says it's urgent. Vanessa minimized the window with Ethan's file and straightened in her chair. Send him in. Marcus came through the door already talking, which was his usual mode of operation. We have a problem with the Meridian account. Big problem. They're threatening to pull out of the renewal unless we can guarantee the same level of risk assessment accuracy we delivered last year, and frankly, I'm not sure we can without what? Marcus hesitated, which was unusual for him. He was normally aggressively confident, sometimes to the point of delusion. Without Ethan, he built the algorithm that caught the Meridian fraud pattern. Nobody else on the team can replicate what he did, and he's refusing to take on the account personally because it would require overtime. Vanessa felt something shift in her chest. What kind of overtime? A few late nights, maybe one weekend, 2 weeks max. It's not unreasonable, Vanessa. This is a $12 million account. And Ethan said no. He said, Marcus pulled out his phone and read from what was apparently a text message. Appreciate the opportunity, but I can't commit to hours outside my regular schedule. I'm happy to consult with whoever takes point on the project during normal business hours. Normal business hours? Like he's working at a bank or something. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and studied Marcus. He was a good manager most of the time, smart, driven, results-oriented. But he was also divorced twice, estranged from his teenage son, and had admitted at a leadership retreat last year that he couldn't remember the last time he'd taken a vacation that didn't involve checking email. What did you say to him? I told him this was important, that the team needed him, that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the good of the company. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. He just looked at me and said he'd already made his sacrifices and they weren't negotiable. Then he walked out of my office at 5 p.m., exactly 5 p.m. And now you want me to what? Order him to do it? I want you to talk to him. Make him understand that this is his career we're talking about. He's talented, Vanessa, but talent only gets you so far if you're not willing to put in the work. Vanessa thought about Ethan's face when he'd talked about his daughter, the way he'd said she's everything without hesitation or qualification. The way he'd left her party to go home and check on a 6-year-old who was afraid of the dark. Schedule a meeting, she heard herself say, this afternoon, just me and Ethan. Marcus looked surprised. You're going to talk to him personally? Is that a problem? No, it's just, he's a senior analyst. That's pretty far down the org chart for a CEO one-on-one. Then consider it an unusual situation requiring unusual attention. Vanessa turned back to her laptop, dismissing him. Have Jennifer set it up for 4 p.m. And Marcus, don't tell Ethan what it's about. Just say I want to discuss the Meridian account. Marcus left looking confused but hopeful, which was probably the best she could give him right now. As soon as the door closed, Vanessa pulled Ethan's file back up and stared at it like it might reveal something new. What was she doing? This wasn't about the Meridian account. She could assign that to any of a dozen qualified people and Meridian would be fine. This was about what? Curiosity? Loneliness? Some pathetic attempt to recapture the feeling of actually connecting with another human being? Her phone buzzed. Text from her sister Claire, who she hadn't spoken to in 3 months despite living in the same city. Lunch this week? I miss you. Vanessa stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Crazy schedule. I'll let you know." She deleted it before sending and tried again. "Would love to. Thursday?" That felt too eager. She settled on, "Sure, I'll have Jennifer send you some options." Professional, distant, safe. She hit send and immediately felt like garbage about it. The rest of the morning disappeared in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Singapore expansion, Q4 projections, a potential acquisition in Austin that the board was excited about, but Vanessa had reservations regarding. By the time Jennifer appeared in her doorway at 3:45 to remind her about the 4 p.m. with Ethan Cole, Vanessa had almost forgotten she'd scheduled it. Almost. "He's here early," Jennifer said, "waiting in conference room B." Vanessa glanced at her laptop clock. 3:47. Early? Apparently he wanted to make sure he could still leave at 5, so he came up as soon as his regular work allowed. Jennifer's tone was carefully neutral, but Vanessa caught the edge of disapproval. Her assistant definitely thought this meeting was a waste of the CEO's valuable time. "Thank you, Jennifer. I'll head over now." Conference room B was one of the smaller meeting spaces. Just a table and 6 chairs and a window that looked out over the Chicago River. Ethan was standing by that window when Vanessa walked in, hands in his pockets, looking at something on the street below. He turned when he heard the door, and Vanessa saw him clock her presence with what looked like resignation rather than excitement. Not a great start. "Mr. Cole, thank you for meeting with me. Did I have a choice?" He said it without hostility, just genuine curiosity, and Vanessa found herself appreciating the directness even as it made this conversation harder. Technically, yes. Practically, probably not. She closed the door behind her and moved to the table, but didn't sit. "I understand Marcus spoke to you about the Meridian account." "He did." "And you declined to take it on." "I did." Ethan moved away from the window, not sitting either. They stood on opposite sides of the table like negotiators at a peace talk. "I assume that's why I'm here. You want to try to change my mind." "Should I?" He smiled, just barely. "You can try, but I should tell you up front that it won't work, so we could save both of us some time if you just accepted that now." Vanessa felt something that might have been amusement or might have been frustration. "You're very certain." "I'm very clear. There's a difference." Ethan pulled out a chair and sat, apparently deciding that the standoff wasn't productive. After a moment, Vanessa did the same. "Look, I know what this looks like. Talented employee refuses to go the extra mile, seems uncommitted. Probably not a team player, but that's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "It's me knowing my priorities and refusing to pretend they're negotiable." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and Vanessa was struck again by how present he seemed. How there. "I have a daughter who lost her mother when she was 3 years old. For the last 3 years, I've been the only parent she has, the only constant in her life. And I made a promise, to myself, to her, to—" He stopped, seemed to reconsider. "To someone who mattered very much to me. That promise was that I would show up, every single day, no exceptions." The conference room felt very quiet suddenly. "Your wife," Vanessa said softly. "The promise was to your wife." Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went distant. "Yes. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry, it doesn't change anything." He said it without bitterness, just fact. "The point is, I made a choice. I chose my daughter over my career. I chose being present over being successful. And I'd make that choice again every single day for the rest of my life." "But you're good at what you do." Vanessa heard the frustration in her own voice and tried to dial it back. "Marcus says you're the best analyst he's ever seen. That algorithm you built for Meridian saved the company millions of dollars. Don't you want to use that talent? Don't you want to do more?" "I am doing more. Just not here." Ethan gestured at the office around them, the tower, the company. "This is what I do to pay my bills and provide for my daughter. It's important, and I take it seriously, but it's not my life. My life is Lila. My life is being there when she gets home from school. My life is helping her with homework and making dinner and reading bedtime stories and dealing with the nightmares and the questions about her mom and all the other messy, complicated, beautiful parts of raising a human being. That's where I'm using my talent. That's where I'm doing more. Vanessa felt something crack inside her chest. She thought about her own life, about the empty penthouse and the endless work, and the way she'd stood in the rain at her own party, feeling completely hollow. "You think I'm wasting my potential," she said quietly. Ethan looked startled. "What? No, I think you're—" He stopped, studying her face like he was seeing something new. "Wait, is that what you think? That you're wasting your potential?" "I don't know what I think anymore." The honesty came out before she could stop it, before the CEO mask could slide back into place. "Friday night, at the gala, you said something about living in should versus living in is." I can't stop thinking about that." "You came to my office to talk about your existential crisis?" "I came to your office to talk about the Meridian account. The existential crisis is just a bonus." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, suddenly exhausted. "And for the record, you're right. I am wasting my potential. I've built an empire, but I don't have a life. I have success, but no purpose. I have everything I thought I wanted and nothing that actually matters." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "You know that's not my problem to solve, right?" "I know. And you know that I'm not going to change my mind about Meridian." "I know that too. So what are we doing here?" Vanessa looked at him across the conference table and realized she had no idea. What was she doing? Seeking validation from a stranger? Looking for permission to want something different? Hoping that this man who seemed to have figured out what actually mattered could somehow give her the answer? "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe I just wanted to understand how you do it. How you walk away from career advancement and opportunities and all the things you're supposed to want and still feel like you're doing the right thing." "I don't always feel like I'm doing the right thing," Ethan said. "Some nights I lie awake wondering if I'm screwing up my daughter by not being able to afford a bigger house or better schools, or all the things that money could buy if I was willing to work for it. Some days I watch my colleagues get promoted past me, and I feel angry and resentful, and like I'm betraying the education and the talent and everything I could have been." He paused. "But then Lila comes home from school and shows me a drawing she made or tells me about her day or asks me to play pretend, and I remember. This is what I'm choosing, this messy, complicated, sometimes frustrating, absolutely irreplaceable thing. And I'd rather have this than any corner office or impressive title or amount of money." "But what if you could have both?" "I can't. Nobody can, not really. Maybe some people are better at juggling than I am, but for me," he shook his head, "for me, trying to have both means doing neither of them well. And I'd rather be an excellent father than a mediocre father with an impressive career." Vanessa thought about her own father, who'd built a successful real estate business and spent most of her childhood on business trips. She'd seen him maybe twice a month growing up. They had lunch every 6 months now, awkward meals where they talked about the market and real estate trends, and never mentioned the fact that they barely knew each other. "My father chose the career," she said. "I told myself I'd never be like him, and then I became exactly like him." "You don't have kids?" "No. But I have a sister I haven't seen in 3 months, even though she lives 20 minutes away. I have employees who are terrified of me. I have a life that looks incredible from the outside and feels empty from the inside." She met Ethan's eyes. "I stood in the rain Friday night after you left, and I couldn't think of a single person who would notice if I disappeared tomorrow." Ethan's expression softened. "Your sister would notice." "Would she? Or would she just feel relieved that she didn't have to keep trying to have a relationship with someone who never has time for her?" "That's not—" Ethan stopped, reconsidered. "Okay, maybe that's fair. But the good news is, it's not too late. You could call your sister right now. You could have dinner with her this week. You could start building something real. Just like that. Just like that. It's not easy, but it's simple." He glanced at his watch, 4:23, and Vanessa felt him starting to pull away, starting to think about leaving. "Look, I need to head out soon. Was there anything else about Meridian, or are we done pretending this meeting was about work?" Vanessa laughed despite herself. "We're done pretending." "Good." Ethan stood, and she did too. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who's very good at achieving goals, and maybe you just need to figure out what goals actually matter to you. And if I don't know what those are, then you start paying attention. You notice what makes you feel alive versus what makes you feel empty. You notice who you want to spend time with versus who you spend time with out of obligation. You notice the difference between should and is. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. And maybe you stop working 80-hour weeks and see what happens when you have time to actually think about any of this. I can't just, sure you can. You're the CEO. You can do whatever you want. Ethan smiled. You just have to be willing to want something different. And then he was gone, leaving Vanessa standing in conference room B feeling like she'd just been given homework she didn't know how to complete. She stayed there for a few minutes, looking out at the Chicago River and the buildings beyond, thinking about everything and nothing. Finally, she pulled out her phone and opened her text conversation with Claire. Thursday lunch sounds great, she typed. Let me know where you want to go. My treat. Then, before she could overthink it, I've missed you too. She hit send and felt something loosen in her chest. The rest of the week moved strangely. Vanessa went through the motions of work, meetings, decisions, strategy sessions, but part of her attention was somewhere else, cataloging the things Ethan had said, noticing what made her feel alive versus empty, paying attention to should versus is. Wednesday afternoon, she found herself walking past the analytics department on her way back from a meeting on the 40th floor. She could have taken the elevator, but instead she took the stairs down 2 flights and made a detour through the open-plan workspace where Ethan's team sat. She spotted him at a desk near the window, headphones on, completely focused on whatever was on his screen. He had the kind of concentration that made the rest of the world disappear. Vanessa watched him for maybe 30 seconds before Marcus noticed her presence and came rushing over looking panicked. Ms. Hale, is everything all right? Did you need something? Just passing through, Marcus. Don't let me interrupt. But Marcus was already in full performance mode, speaking too loudly, making sure everyone knew the CEO was in the room. Several people looked up from their work, including Ethan, who pulled off his headphones and saw her standing there. Their eyes met across the office. Ethan raised one eyebrow in a look that clearly said, "Really?" And Vanessa felt her face heat with embarrassment. This was stupid. She was being stupid. She turned to leave, but Marcus was still talking. Something about the team's productivity metrics and a new project timeline, and she had to stand there and pretend to care while being acutely aware of Ethan going back to his work like she wasn't even there. Finally, she extracted herself and made it back to the elevator, feeling like an idiot. What had she been doing? Checking up on him? Making sure he was really as committed to his 5 p.m. departure as he claimed? Looking for what? She didn't know. That was the problem. She didn't know what she wanted or why she wanted it, or what she was supposed to do about any of it. Thursday lunch with Claire was better and worse than she expected. Better because her sister was warm and funny and genuinely happy to see her. Worse because the happiness was undercut with surprise, like Claire couldn't quite believe Vanessa had actually shown up. They met at a restaurant in River North, small and intimate, the kind of place where you could actually have a conversation. Claire was already there when Vanessa arrived, looking pretty in a way that made Vanessa realize how long it had been since she'd really looked at her sister. When had Claire cut her hair? When had she started wearing that style of glasses? You look good, Vanessa said, sliding into the booth across from her. You look exhausted, Claire said, which was true. Are you sleeping? Define sleeping. More than 4 hours a night. Then no, Claire sighed. Vanessa, I know, it's not sustainable. I'm working on it. She picked up the menu even though she wasn't hungry. Tell me what's going on with you. How's work? Claire taught high school English on the South Side, a job that paid basically nothing and that she loved with an intensity Vanessa had never understood. They talked about her students, about a new curriculum she was developing, about the eternal struggle for funding and resources. Vanessa listened and found herself genuinely interested, which was new. You're actually paying attention, Claire said at one point, sounding surprised. I'm always paying attention. No, you're always pretending to pay attention while thinking about work. This is different. Claire studied her across the table. What's going on with you? And don't say nothing, because I know you better than that. Vanessa set down her fork and looked at her sister. Really looked at her. When was the last time they'd done this? Just sat together and talked like real people instead of distant relatives? Do you think I'm like Dad? She asked. Claire didn't hesitate. Yes. Wow. Okay, thanks for that. You asked. Claire reached across the table and took Vanessa's hand, which was so unexpected that Vanessa almost pulled away. You're like him in the ways you're scared of being like him, if that makes sense. The working all the time, the putting career above everything else, the not being present even when you're physically there. But you're also not like him, because you're here right now. Dad would never have taken time out of his day to have lunch with me just because I asked. I've been a terrible sister. Yeah, Claire agreed. You have been. But you're here now, so maybe stop being terrible and we can figure out what comes next. Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes, which was absurd. She didn't cry. She especially didn't cry in public restaurants over lunch with her sister. I don't know what I'm doing, she said quietly. I thought I had it all figured out, and now I'm standing in the middle of my life and I don't recognize any of it. So change it. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Claire squeezed her hand. You're Vanessa Hale. You built a billion-dollar company from nothing. You're telling me you can't figure out how to have a life? It was almost exactly what Ethan had said. The same message from different people, like the universe was trying to tell her something, and she was too stubborn to listen. They finished lunch and walked along the river afterward, not talking about anything important, just being together. When they hugged goodbye, Claire held on longer than usual. Same time next week, she asked. Yeah, Vanessa said. Same time next week. That afternoon, Vanessa did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She left work early. Not middle of the night early, but actual early. 4:30 p.m. early. She told Jennifer to reschedule her last 2 meetings, ignored the look of shock on her assistant's face, and walked out of the building into October sunshine. She had no plan, no destination. She just started walking, following the river north, watching the city move around her. Runners on the path, tourists taking photos, a guy walking 3 dogs that kept getting tangled up in their leashes. Normal life. The kind of life she'd stopped noticing years ago. She was maybe 6 blocks from the office when she passed an elementary school, all red brick and chain link fence. Kids were pouring out the front doors, a chaotic stream of backpacks and noise and energy. Parents waited on the sidewalk, some of them on phones, some of them chatting with each other, all of them scanning the crowd for their particular child. Vanessa stopped walking. She didn't know why. Something made her pause on the opposite side of the street and watch the reunion scene play out. And then she saw him. Ethan was easy to spot, taller than most of the other parents, standing near the gate with his hands in his pockets. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was just waiting, watching the door, and then a little girl burst out of the school and spotted him. She had dark hair and 2 messy braids, and she was wearing a purple backpack that looked too big for her small frame. The moment she saw Ethan, her whole face lit up. She ran. Flat out ran across the playground, dodging other kids, her backpack bouncing, and threw herself at Ethan like he was home base in the world's most important game of tag. Ethan caught her, lifted her up, spun her around once. Vanessa was too far away to hear what they were saying, but she could see Lila talking animatedly, her hands moving as she told some story. Ethan was listening with complete attention, nodding, asking questions, laughing at something she said. It was the most ordinary moment in the world. A father picking up his daughter from school. Happened 1,000 times a day, in 1,000 places. Nothing special, except Vanessa stood there and watched it and felt something she couldn't name. Longing, maybe, or recognition, or just the simple, terrible awareness of what she didn't have. Ethan set Lila down and took her hand. They started walking away from the school, heading south on the opposite sidewalk. Vanessa knew she should leave, knew that standing here watching them was creepy at best, stalkerish at worst, but she couldn't seem to move. She watched them walk together, Lila's small hand in Ethan's larger one, watched them stop at a crosswalk and wait for the light, watched Ethan lean down to tie Lila's shoe while she balanced on one foot. Such a small thing, so unremarkable. And Vanessa stood there in her designer suit and her expensive shoes and felt like she was looking through a window into a life she'd never even considered wanting. They disappeared around a corner, and finally Vanessa could move again. She turned and walked back toward her building, back toward her car, back toward her empty penthouse and her empty life. But something had shifted. Something had cracked open. That night, she called Claire. "Can I ask you something?" Vanessa said when her sister answered. "Sure, what's up?" "Do you remember what you wanted to be when you were a kid?" Claire laughed. "That's random. Why? Just answer." "Okay, I wanted to be a teacher, which, worked out." A pause. "What did you want to be?" Vanessa thought back to a version of herself that felt impossibly distant. 10 years old, before their parents' divorce, before her father's emotional abandonment, before she'd learned that achievement was the only thing that mattered. "Happy," she said quietly. "I wanted to be happy." Claire was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "It's not too late, to want that again." Vanessa ended the call and sat in her dark apartment, looking out at the city, thinking about Ethan and Lila walking home together, thinking about what Ethan had said about choosing his daughter over his career, thinking about the way his whole face had changed when he talked about her. She's everything. Vanessa had built an empire. She had wealth and power and influence. She had everything she'd thought she wanted, but she didn't have everything, not even close. And for the first time in her adult life, she let herself want something different. The truth came out by accident, the way truth usually does when you're not looking for it. Vanessa was in a board meeting 3 weeks later, only half listening to the CFO drone on about quarterly projections, when her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. She normally wouldn't have checked it during a meeting, but something made her glance down. "Need to talk. It's about Ethan Cole, personal matter, not urgent, but important." She excused herself, which raised some eyebrows around the table, and found Marcus waiting in the hallway outside the boardroom looking uncomfortable in a way that immediately put her on edge. "This better be actually important," she said. "It is, I think." Marcus glanced around, making sure they were alone. "Look, I know you talked to Ethan a few weeks ago about the Meridian thing, and I know he didn't budge, but I thought you should know why, the real why. He has a daughter. I know that. It's more than that." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then seemed to decide against showing her. His wife died 4 years ago, cancer. She was sick for about a year before that, and Ethan basically put his whole career on hold to take care of her. He'd come to work, leave at exactly 5 p.m. every day to get home to her. Made the same promise he makes now, that he'd be there, that she wouldn't be alone. Vanessa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Marcus, after she died, he kept the same schedule. For Lila. The daughter was only 3 when it happened, and Ethan was terrified she'd lose both parents, So he made this promise that he'd always be there when she needed him, always pick her up from school, always be home for dinner, always be the constant she could count on. Marcus's voice had gone soft, which was unusual for him. That's why he won't work late. That's why he turns down promotions. It's not about ambition or career or any of that. It's about a promise to a dead woman that he keeps by showing up for their daughter every single day. The hallway felt too small suddenly, too airless. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you deserve to know. And because," Marcus hesitated, "because I've seen you looking at his file. I'm not stupid, Vanessa. I know you're interested in something, whether it's his work or him personally or whatever. And I figured you should have the full picture before you decide what to do with that interest." Vanessa stared at him. There's nothing. I didn't say there was. I'm just saying now you know." Marcus checked his watch. "I should get back. Board meeting still going?" "Yeah, I'll be right there." But she wasn't right there. She stood in that hallway for a full 5 minutes, processing what Marcus had told her, feeling like the ground had shifted under her feet, a promise to a dead woman. Vanessa thought about Ethan at the school gate, the way Lila had run to him like he was the safest place in the world. She thought about the comment he'd made at the gala about living in should, until it nearly destroyed him. She thought about the note in his HR file requesting strict boundaries around work hours. It all made sense now. And it made what she'd been feeling, this pull toward him, this fascination with his life, seem even more complicated and possibly cruel. She went back to the board meeting, apologized for the interruption, and tried to focus on the rest of the presentation. But her mind was elsewhere, cataloging everything she knew about Ethan Cole and reorganizing it around this new information. That night, she did what she'd been half afraid to do since that Thursday afternoon when she'd watched him with Lila. She searched for his wife. Sarah Cole, maiden name Harrison, died at 31 from ovarian cancer. Had been a teacher, same as Claire, though at a different school. There was an obituary from 4 years ago that made Vanessa's chest hurt to read. Sarah Cole passed peacefully at home, surrounded by love. She is survived by her husband Ethan and daughter Lila, who were the light of her life. Sarah spent her final year teaching us all what it means to face darkness with grace and to love fiercely in the time we have. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Bright Futures Education Fund, which Sarah believed would change children's lives. Vanessa sat in her dark apartment and read that obituary 3 times, trying to imagine what it would be like to know you were dying and have to say goodbye to a 3-year-old daughter. Trying to imagine being Ethan, watching someone you loved slip away while trying to be strong for a child who didn't understand why mommy was sick. She understood now why he'd looked at her with that mix of patience and distance when she'd pushed him about career advancement. What did any of that matter when you'd already lost the most important thing? The Bright Futures Education Fund turned out to be a scholarship program for low-income students in Chicago public schools. Vanessa found the website easily enough. It was small, run mostly by volunteers, clearly operating on a shoestring budget. They'd given out maybe 30 scholarships in the last 4 years. Small amounts that probably didn't change lives, but at least helped. She stared at the donation page for a long time before closing her laptop without clicking anything. November came in cold and gray, the kind of weather that made Chicago feel like the city was personally offended by the concept of warmth. Vanessa kept going to lunch with Claire every Thursday, which turned into the one part of her week she actually looked forward to. They talked about everything and nothing. Claire's students, their mother's latest passive-aggressive phone call, whether Vanessa should cut her hair. "You seem different," Claire said one week, studying her across the table. "Different how?" "I don't know, less tightly wound maybe? Like you're not constantly 5 seconds from having a stress-induced heart attack." "That's a low bar." "It's the bar we're working with." Claire sipped her coffee. "Are you seeing someone?" "What?" "No." "Why would you?" "Because you have that look, that distracted thinking about someone look." Vanessa felt her face heat. "I don't have a look." "You absolutely have a look. You've been checking your phone every 5 minutes, you keep spacing out in the middle of conversations, and last week you smiled at literally nothing." Claire leaned forward, grinning. "Come on, who is he?" "There's no he." "Liar?" "I'm not lying. There's no relationship. There's just—" Vanessa stopped, unsure how to explain it. "There's someone I find interesting, that's all." "Interesting like you want to acquire his company? Or interesting like you want to see him naked?" "Claire!" "What?" "I'm just asking for clarification." Vanessa buried her face in her hands. "I don't know. Neither. Both. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" And because it was Claire, because these weekly lunches had slowly rebuilt something fragile between them, Vanessa told her. About Ethan at the gala, about their conversation in the conference room, about watching him pick up his daughter from school. She even told her about Sarah, about the promise, about the way understanding his story had made everything simultaneously clearer and more impossible. Claire listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When Vanessa finally finished, her sister was quiet for a long moment. "You need to be really careful here," Claire said finally. "I know. I'm serious, Vanessa. This guy lost his wife. He's raising a daughter alone. He's not some corporate challenge you can solve with the right strategy." "I know that." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're building this whole fantasy around someone you barely know because he represents something you think is missing in your life." The words stung because they were probably true. Vanessa set down her fork and looked at her sister. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Maybe start by figuring out what you actually want. Not what he has, but what you want for yourself." Claire's voice gentled. "And maybe actually talk to him like a normal person instead of stalking him at school pickup." "I wasn't stalking." "You were absolutely stalking. One time. One time that you've admitted to." Claire reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Look, I'm not saying don't pursue this if it's real. I'm just saying make sure it's about him and not about some idealized version of what his life represents, because that's not fair to either of you." Vanessa nodded, feeling like a teenager getting relationship advice, which was ridiculous because she was 30 years old and a billionaire CEO, and she should have this figured out by now. But she didn't have it figured out. She didn't have anything figured out. That Friday, on impulse, Vanessa wrote a check to the Bright Futures Education Fund, $20,000 donated anonymously. It felt strange and also necessary, like she was trying to connect to something she didn't fully understand. The following Monday, she found out that the elementary school Lila attended, Washington Elementary, she'd looked it up, had just cut their entire arts program due to budget shortfalls. The information came up in a random conversation with the head of Hailtech's community outreach department, who was complaining about how city schools kept getting their funding slashed. Vanessa pulled up the school's website. Washington Elementary served a mostly low-income neighborhood on the west side. The arts program had been small, just a part-time art teacher and a music teacher who split time between 3 schools. But the announcement on the website made it clear how much it had meant to the students. She thought about Lila losing something she loved because of money. She thought about Ethan trying to explain budget cuts to a 6-year-old. And before she could overthink it, she had her assistant call the school. "I want to make a donation," Vanessa told the principal when they connected her. "Enough to restore the arts program for the rest of the school year, but I want it to be anonymous." The principal, a woman named Dr. Martinez, who sounded exhausted and surprised in equal measure, tried to get details. Who was donating? What was the motivation? Could they announce it to the community? "No announcements," Vanessa said firmly. "Just restore the program. Hire back the teachers, buy supplies, do whatever needs to be done. The money will be wired by the end of the week." She hung up before Dr. Martinez could ask more questions and sat at her desk feeling strange about the whole thing. Was this helping or was this interfering? Was she doing something genuinely good or was she trying to buy her way into Ethan's life by proxy? Claire's words echoed in her head. Make sure it's about him and not about some idealized version of what his life represents. But what if she couldn't separate the two? What if the version of Ethan she'd built in her head had become so tangled up with what she wanted that she couldn't see the real person anymore? The answer came 2 weeks later, in the most unexpected way possible. Vanessa was leaving the office late, old habits died hard apparently, when she ran into Ethan in the lobby. Literally ran into him. She came around a corner checking her phone and walked straight into someone, and that someone turned out to be Ethan carrying a file box and looking annoyed. "Sorry, I wasn't—" She stopped when she realized who it was. "Ethan, what are you doing here at 9 p.m.? He looked equally surprised to see her. "Server migration. Marcus needed someone who actually understands our risk assessment protocols to be on standby in case anything went wrong with the data transfer. I told him I'd stay until 10 and not a minute later." "Right, of course." She looked at the file box. "What's that?" "Old client files that were flagged for review. I'm taking them home to look at over the weekend." He must have seen something in her expression because he added, "During the day, while Lila's at her friend's birthday party. I'm not working late at home. I'm just shifting the hours around. You don't have to explain yourself to me, don't I? You're the CEO. I'm pretty sure you could fire me for having opinions about work-life balance. I'm not going to fire you for having opinions." "Good to know." He shifted the box to his other arm. "Was there something you needed, or are we just making awkward small talk in the lobby?" Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, then decided to just say it. "I heard about your wife, about Sarah. I'm sorry." Ethan's whole body went still. "Who told you?" "Marcus. He thought I should know." "Of course he did." Ethan's voice had gone flat in a way that made Vanessa immediately regret saying anything. "Let me guess. He wanted you to understand why I'm so difficult about scheduling, why I won't be a team player, why I'm wasting my potential." That's exactly it. Because apparently being a widower and a single father makes me a tragic figure instead of just a person with boundaries. He set the file box down on a nearby bench, and Vanessa could see the tension in his shoulders. "I don't talk about Sarah at work specifically because I don't want to be that guy. The one everyone pities or makes allowances for or treats differently because they know about the sad thing that happened to him." "I don't pity you." "No? Then what do you feel?" Vanessa didn't know how to answer that. What did she feel? Admiration? Fascination? Something that might be falling for an idea of a person rather than the actual person standing in front of her. "I think you're remarkable," she said finally. "The way you show up for your daughter every day, the way you keep the promise you made, the way you know what matters and you don't apologize for it. I think that's—" "Stop." Ethan's voice was sharp enough that Vanessa actually took a step back. Don't do that. Don't make me into some kind of hero because I'm doing the bare minimum of being a parent. Don't romanticize my life because it looks more meaningful than yours from the outside. I'm not. You are. I can see it in the way you look at me, like I have some secret answer to the questions you're asking about your own life. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. But here's the truth, Vanessa. My life isn't beautiful or inspiring or any of the things you think it is. It's hard. It's lonely. There are nights when Lila cries for her mother and there's nothing I can do to fix it. There are mornings when I wake up and the first thought I have is that Sarah's gone and I'm doing this alone and I have no idea if I'm screwing it up. There are moments when I resent the hell out of the promise I made because it means I can't. He stopped abruptly, like he'd said more than he meant to. Can't what? Vanessa asked quietly. Can't have a life of my own. Can't date someone without wondering if they're signing up for a ready-made family. Can't even consider that there might be a version of my future that includes something other than just being Lila's dad. His voice had gone quiet, almost defeated. So don't look at me like I've figured it all out, because I haven't. I'm just doing the best I can with an impossible situation. They stood there in the empty lobby, the cleaning crew vacuuming somewhere on an upper floor, the security guard at his desk pointedly not looking at them. I saw you, Vanessa said, at Lila's school. I was walking by and I saw you pick her up, and the way she ran to you, it looked like everything I don't have. That's what I mean. You're seeing what you want to see. Maybe, but I'm also seeing a man who loves his daughter enough to turn down career advancement and money and everything the world says you're supposed to want. And yeah, maybe I'm romanticizing it, but at least you have something real to romanticize. I have a penthouse and a company and a net worth that most people can't comprehend, and none of it means anything. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. So change it. Everyone keeps saying that like it's easy. It's not easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. He picked up the file box again. But it is simple. You decide what you actually want, and then you do the hard work of building toward it. You stop waiting for permission or for the perfect moment or for someone else to give you the answer. What if I don't know what I want? Then you start paying attention until you figure it out. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Vanessa, whatever you're looking for, you're not going to find it in my life or my daughter or the fantasy version of me you've constructed. You have to find it in yourself. He left, and Vanessa stood in the lobby feeling like she'd just failed a test she didn't know she was taking. She went home to her empty penthouse and poured a glass of wine she didn't drink and sat by the window looking out at the city. Ethan was right. She'd been building a fantasy, using him and Lila as stand-ins for whatever was missing in her own life. That wasn't fair to any of them, but knowing that didn't make the loneliness easier to bear. Her phone rang. Claire. Hey, Vanessa said. What's up? I was thinking about you, wanted to check in. Claire's voice was warm over the line. You okay? Define okay. That bad, huh? Vanessa told her about the conversation with Ethan, about how he'd called her out for romanticizing his life, about how right he'd been, and how much it stung. He sounds smart, Claire said when she finished. He is smart. That's part of the problem. No, the problem is you're trying to find yourself through someone else instead of doing the actual work. Claire's voice was gentle but firm, and I say that with love, but also with the knowledge that you're going to be pissed at me for saying it. I'm not pissed. You're a little pissed. Maybe a little. Vanessa set down the wine glass. What am I supposed to do, Claire? I can't go back to pretending I'm happy with the way things are, but I don't know how to build something different. Start small. What's one thing that made you happy this week? Vanessa thought about it. Lunch with you? Okay. What else? I donated money to Lila's school to restore their arts program. It felt good, like I was doing something that mattered. There you go. Do more of that. More anonymous donations to elementary schools? More things that make you feel like you're doing something that matters. Claire paused. And maybe consider that the mattering doesn't have to be tied to Ethan or his daughter. Maybe you can find your own version of what matters. After they hung up, Vanessa pulled up the Bright Futures Education Fund website again. This time she didn't just donate money, she filled out the volunteer application. The next Thursday, instead of going straight from lunch with Claire back to the office, Vanessa found herself at Washington Elementary. She'd signed up to help with the restored art program, told them she had some free time and wanted to give back to the community. Dr. Martinez had looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Billionaire CEOs didn't typically volunteer to help 6-year-olds with finger painting, but she'd accepted the offer. Vanessa spent 2 hours that afternoon in a classroom that smelled like tempera paint and glue, helping kids work on a mural about their neighborhood. She got paint on her blouse, had to break up an argument about who got to use the red, and listened to a very serious discussion about whether dinosaurs would have liked pizza. It was chaos. It was messy. It was completely outside her comfort zone, and it was the best she'd felt in months. She was washing paint off her hands in the classroom sink when she heard a familiar voice in the hallway. Her whole body went tense before she could stop it. Ethan. She dried her hands quickly and stepped out into the hall. And there he was, holding Lila's hand, both of them stopping to look at student artwork on the walls. Lila was chattering about something, pointing at a drawing, and Ethan was listening with that same complete attention Vanessa had noticed before. They hadn't seen her yet. She could slip back into the classroom, wait until they left, avoid the whole awkward confrontation. But then Lila turned her head and spotted Vanessa standing there. "Daddy, that's the paint lady." Lila tugged on Ethan's hand. "That's the nice lady who helped us with the mural." Ethan looked up, and Vanessa watched recognition and surprise cross his face in quick succession. For a second, neither of them said anything, just stood there in the elementary school hallway, while Lila looked between them with the uncomplicated curiosity of a 6-year-old. "Hi," Vanessa said finally, feeling absurdly awkward. "Hi," Ethan echoed. Then to Lila, "You had a volunteer helper today?" "Yes. She's really nice and she knows a lot about colors, and she said my tree was beautiful even though I made the leaves purple." Lila beamed up at Vanessa. "I'm Lila. What's your name?" "Vanessa." "That's a pretty name. Do you like art?" "I'm learning to," Vanessa said honestly. Ethan was still looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. Finally he said, "Lila, why don't you go grab your backpack from your cubby? I need to talk to Miss Vanessa for a second." "Okay." Lila skipped off down the hallway, purple backpack bouncing. The moment she was out of earshot, Ethan turned to Vanessa. "What are you doing here?" "Volunteering. I told you I donated to restore the arts program, and then I thought." "You donated to Lila's school." "I donated to the school before I knew it was Lila's school. And then when I found out they'd cut the arts program, She stopped. There was no way to explain this that didn't sound exactly like what Ethan had accused her of. "You're right. This was a mistake. I'm sorry." She started to walk past him, but he caught her arm gently. "Wait." Vanessa stopped. "I was too harsh the other night," Ethan said quietly. "In the lobby. You didn't deserve that. You were right, though, about all of it. Maybe, but you're also here, actually doing something instead of just thinking about it. That counts for something." He let go of her arm. "The arts program. That was you?" "Anonymous donation. I didn't want anyone to know." "Why?" "Because it felt like the right thing to do. Because kids deserve access to art and music and creativity, and it's garbage that budget cuts take that away from them. Because," she met his eyes, "because I wanted to do something that mattered, and this mattered." Lila came running back, backpack secured, oblivious to the tension between the adults. "Ready, Daddy?" "Yeah, kiddo. Let's go home." Ethan looked at Vanessa one more time. "Thank you for the donation, for volunteering, for whatever this is." "I don't know what this is either," Vanessa admitted. "Then I guess we're both figuring it out." They left, Lila waving goodbye over her shoulder, and Vanessa stood in the hallway of Washington Elementary feeling like something had shifted. Like maybe Ethan seeing her there, actually showing up and doing the work, meant something different than her standing outside the school watching from across the street. Like maybe she was finally starting to build something real instead of just observing someone else's reality from a distance. She went back to the art room and helped finish cleaning up, then drove back to the office. It was almost 6 p.m. by the time she got there, which meant she'd missed 3 meetings and probably given Jennifer a stress ulcer. But for once, she didn't care. She was learning what mattered. Slowly, imperfectly, probably making mistakes along the way. But she was learning. Vanessa kept volunteering at Washington Elementary every Thursday afternoon, and she kept it quiet. She didn't mention it at work, didn't post about it on social media, didn't even tell Claire at first. It felt private, like something that would lose its meaning if she tried to explain it to anyone else. The kids knew her as Miss Vanessa, the paint lady who sometimes brought fancy markers and helped them mix colors and never got mad when someone spilled water all over the table. She learned their names: Jaden, who only wanted to draw monsters; Ava, who made elaborate portraits of her cat; Marcus, different Marcus, small Marcus with gaps in his teeth, who mostly just liked squeezing glue bottles and making shapes; and Lila, who gravitated toward Vanessa every single Thursday with a trust that felt both wonderful and terrifying. "You're really good at trees," Lila announced one afternoon, watching Vanessa demonstrate shading techniques. "Do you have trees at your house?" "I have a view of the park," Vanessa said. "There are trees there." "We have a tree in our yard. It's not very big, but Daddy says it's growing." Lila added more purple to her painting. Everything Lila made had purple in it somewhere. "Do you have kids?" "No." "How come?" The question was innocent, no judgment in it, but it still landed like a punch. How come? Because she'd spent her 20s building a company instead of a life. Because she'd told herself there would be time for that later. And later had turned into now, and now she was 30 and alone and painting with second graders on Thursday afternoons. "I just don't," Vanessa said finally. "Oh, okay." Lila accepted this with the easy adaptability of childhood and moved on. "Can you help me with the sky? I want it to be sunset, but it keeps looking like mud." They worked on the sunset together, and Vanessa tried not to think about the fact that this little girl's casual question had exposed something raw that she'd been trying to ignore. After class, when parents started arriving for pickup, Vanessa always found a reason to be cleaning up in the back of the room. She didn't want to make things awkward with Ethan, didn't want him to think she was using the volunteering as an excuse to insert herself into his life. But 2 weeks after that first accidental encounter, Ethan came into the art room instead of waiting in the hallway. "Hey," he said, and Vanessa looked up from wiping down tables to find him standing in the doorway looking uncertain. "Can we talk for a minute?" Her heart did something complicated. "Sure." "Lila's gathering her stuff?" "Yeah, Mrs. Chen is helping her." He moved into the room, hands in his pockets. "I wanted to say thank you for volunteering. The art teacher told Dr. Martinez that you've been incredibly helpful, and Lila talks about you constantly at home. She's a great kid." "She is, but that's not—" Ethan stopped, started again. "I've been thinking about what I said to you, about romanticizing my life, about looking for answers in the wrong places. And I stand by that. But I also think I was being unfair. You weren't wrong. Maybe not, but you're actually showing up. You're doing the work. That's more than most people do when they have their moment of existential crisis." He smiled slightly. "Most billionaires just buy a yacht or something." Vanessa laughed despite herself. "I briefly considered a yacht. Decided finger painting was cheaper. And messier. Definitely messier." They stood there in the classroom surrounded by drying artwork and the lingering smell of tempera paint, and something felt different than their previous conversations. Less confrontational, more like they were actually talking instead of circling each other. "I'm getting coffee," Ethan said abruptly. "After I drop Lila at my sister's. There's a place near here that's decent. Do you want to come?" Vanessa's brain went briefly offline. Was he asking her out? Was this a date? Or was it just coffee between two people who kept running into each other? Yes. Okay. Coffee sounds good. Good. Meet you there in 20 minutes. He pulled out his phone and texted her the address. "I should warn you, it's nothing fancy. Just coffee and maybe some stale pastries." "I think I can handle stale pastries." 23 minutes later, she'd sat in her car for 3 minutes trying to calm down, which was ridiculous. Vanessa walked into a small coffee shop on the west side that was exactly as not fancy as Ethan had promised. Mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, a chalkboard menu with handwritten specials. Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. "I got you a latte," he said when she sat down. "Total guess. If you hate it, I can get something else." "Latte's perfect." She wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for something to do with them. "Does your sister watch Lila a lot?" Rebecca? Yeah, she's a lifesaver. She has 2 kids of her own, so Lila loves going over there. Plus, it means I occasionally get to have a conversation with another adult that doesn't involve explaining why we can't have ice cream for breakfast. He took a sip of his coffee. This is weird, right? Us having coffee. Kind of weird, yeah. I don't really do this. The coffee with someone thing, haven't dated since Sarah died, and before you ask, it's not because I'm not over her, or because I'm some tragic widower figure. It's just complicated with Lila, and most people don't want to sign up for complicated. Vanessa felt her stomach drop. Is that what this is? A date? Ethan looked startled. Maybe? I don't know. I asked you for coffee because I wanted to talk to you without 7-year-olds demanding attention, but I didn't really think through the implications of that. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. Sorry, this is going great. No, it's... Vanessa laughed. We're both terrible at this, apparently. The worst. So maybe we just call it coffee between 2 people who are trying to figure their lives out? That works? Ethan relaxed slightly. Though for the record, I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't interested. In you, as a person. Potentially as more than that, but I'm clearly out of practice with the whole conversation. Vanessa felt heat rise in her face. For the record, I would have said no if I wasn't interested too. Good, okay. So we're on the same page, we're just not sure what page that is. Exactly. They both laughed and some of the tension dissolved. They talked for an hour, about nothing important at first. The coffee shop's weird obsession with oat milk, a movie Ethan had tried to watch after Lila went to bed but fell asleep during. Vanessa's ongoing failure to keep the orchid in her office alive despite Jennifer's detailed care instructions. Then gradually, they moved into deeper territory. Ethan told her about Sarah, about meeting her in grad school and knowing within a month that he wanted to marry her. About the diagnosis that had come out of nowhere when Lila was 2, about the year of treatment and hope and slow realization that hope might not be enough. The worst part wasn't losing her, he said quietly. I mean, that was horrible, obviously, but the worst part was watching her say goodbye to Lila, knowing that Lila was too young to understand what was happening. Sarah would hold her and tell her stories about all the things they'd do together when she got better, and we both knew that better wasn't coming. Vanessa reached across the table and took his hand without thinking about it. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. I promised Sarah I'd take care of Lila, he said. That I'd be there for her in ways my own parents weren't there for me. That Lila would never have to wonder if she was important or if someone was coming home. And I've kept that promise. Sometimes it feels like it's the only thing I've done right in the last 4 years. You've done more than that. Have I? Because most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together, like I'm one bad morning away from completely falling apart. That's called being human, Vanessa said. And for what it's worth, Lila seems pretty happy and well-adjusted for a kid who's been through something that devastating. She has nightmares about losing me too. She won't let me out of her sight some days. Ethan's voice had gone rough. Last month she had a full meltdown at school because I was 10 minutes late for pickup. 10 minutes, and she was convinced something had happened to me. But you showed up, that's what matters. You showed up then, and you show up every single day, and she knows that. Ethan squeezed her hand. Tell me about you, about the empty penthouse and the life that looks good from the outside. So Vanessa told him, about building Hail Tech from nothing, about the drive and ambition that had consumed her 20s, about reaching 30 and realizing she'd optimized her entire life for success, but had forgotten to include joy. She told him about her father's emotional absence, about Claire and the weekly lunches that were slowly rebuilding their relationship, about standing in the rain at her own gala and feeling completely hollow. I saw you with Lila at the school that day, and I wanted what you have, she admitted. Not you specifically, not at first, just that connection, that sense of purpose, something that mattered more than quarterly earnings. And now? Now I think I was looking at it wrong. I was trying to find meaning in someone else's life instead of building it in my own. She paused. But I also think maybe I was looking for you specifically, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Ethan's thumb moved against her palm, a small gesture that sent electricity up her arm. This is complicated. I know. I have a daughter who's been through enough already. I can't bring someone into her life unless I'm sure. I know that too. And you're my boss, technically, which is a whole other level of complicated. I've thought about that. I could transfer oversight of the analytics department to someone else, make sure there's no direct reporting relationship. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You've thought about HR implications? I've thought about a lot of implications. Vanessa felt vulnerable admitting it, but also relieved to just be honest. I've thought about you more than I probably should, about what this could be if we let it be something. And what could it be? I don't know. Coffee that turns into dinner, that turns into something real, maybe. Something that's not me romanticizing your life or you representing an answer to my existential crisis. Just two people who connect. The coffee shop was starting to empty out, the late afternoon crowd dwindling. Ethan checked his watch and sighed. I need to pick up Lila soon. Rebecca has a thing tonight. Right, of course. But neither of them moved to leave. They sat there holding hands across the table like teenagers, neither wanting to be the first to let go. Can I see you again? Ethan asked finally. Like this. Just us. Intentionally, this time. I'd like that. I can't promise easy. My schedule is what it is, and Lila has to come first. I'm not asking you to change that. I wouldn't want you to change that. Ethan smiled, the real smile that transformed his whole face. Next Thursday, after you're done volunteering? Same coffee shop? Same coffee shop. They did see each other the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that. Coffee turned into coffee, and a walk along the river. That turned into dinner at a quiet restaurant where they could actually talk without interruption. Slowly, carefully, they were building something, but they were also keeping it quiet. Ethan didn't want to confuse Lila until he was sure this was going somewhere. Vanessa didn't want office gossip complicating something that felt fragile and important, so they were careful. No public displays, no social media, just stolen hours on Thursday evenings and occasional texts during the week. It was working mostly, until it wasn't. The problem started with Brad from Acquisitions, who had apparently seen Vanessa and Ethan having coffee together and decided it was worth mentioning to people. By the time the rumor made its way through the office gossip chain, it had transformed from, I saw them having coffee, to, I heard they're sleeping together, to, she's definitely using her position to pressure him. Vanessa found out about it when Jennifer came into her office looking deeply uncomfortable. There's something I need to tell you, Jennifer said, closing the door behind her. There's talk going around about you and Ethan Cole. Vanessa's stomach dropped. What kind of talk? The not good kind. People are saying you're having an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, that you're using your position as CEO to, I don't even want to repeat some of it. It's ugly, Ms. Hale. Who started this? I think it was Brad originally, but it's spread. HR has been fielding questions. Marcus is freaking out because it's his department, and there's... Jennifer hesitated. There's talk that someone might file a formal complaint about hostile work environment or abuse of power. Vanessa felt ice settle in her chest. That's insane. I haven't done anything inappropriate. I know that, but perception matters, especially when there's a power differential. Jennifer looked genuinely worried. You need to get ahead of this before it becomes a real problem. Vanessa spent the rest of the day putting out fires. She had her lawyer review company policy on workplace relationships. She had HR prepare a statement clarifying that there was no inappropriate conduct. She moved oversight of the analytics department to another executive, creating a paper trail that showed she'd addressed any potential conflict of interest. But none of it stopped the whispers, the knowing looks when she walked through the office, the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. And worse, none of it protected Ethan. She found out he was dealing with his own version of the fallout when Marcus cornered her in the hallway on Friday afternoon. We need to talk about Ethan, Marcus said without preamble. What about him? People in my department are uncomfortable. They think he's getting special treatment because of his relationship with you. They're questioning whether his performance reviews are legitimate or if you've been influencing them. That's absurd. I've never influenced. I know that. You know that. But it doesn't matter what's actually true if people believe something else. Marcus looked frustrated. I'm trying to protect him, Vanessa, but this is getting out of control. Someone vandalized his car in the parking garage yesterday, keyed it with something about favors and sleeping to the top. Vanessa felt rage and guilt war in her chest. Who did it? I don't know. Security is looking into it, but Marcus shook his head. The point is, this is affecting him. His work environment has become hostile because of the perception that he's involved with you. So what am I supposed to do? End things to protect the rumor mill? I'm saying you need to consider the impact this is having on him, on his career, his reputation, his ability to do his job without people assuming the worst. Vanessa went straight from that conversation to her car and called Ethan. He answered on the third ring, sounding tired. Hey, I was going to call you. I heard about your car. Silence on the other end. Then, word travels fast. Marcus told me, Ethan, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. It's not your fault that some asshole decided to vandalize property. It's my fault that people are talking, that you're dealing with this at all. Vanessa gripped the steering wheel. I should have thought about this, about how it would look, about how people would react. You did think about it. You transferred oversight, you talked to HR, you did everything right. People are assholes sometimes. This isn't fair to you. Life's not fair. I learned that when Sarah got cancer at 30. Ethan's voice softened. Look, I'm not going to pretend this doesn't suck. It does. But I'm also not going to let office gossip dictate my personal life. We're not doing anything wrong. But it's affecting you. Your job, your reputation. I don't care about my reputation at HailTech. I care about doing good work and leaving at 5 p.m. to pick up my daughter. Everything else is noise. He paused. Unless you're having second thoughts. If this is too much, if you want to, no, I don't want to end this. The certainty in her own voice surprised her. But I need to fix it. I need to make sure you're protected. You can't control what other people think or say. No, but I can control how I respond to it. Monday morning, Vanessa called an all-hands meeting for the analytics department. Marcus tried to talk her out of it, argued that it would only draw more attention, but she was done being careful. The meeting room was packed, every analyst and associate and assistant crammed in or standing in the hallway. Ethan was in the back, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Vanessa stood at the front of the room and waited for the noise to die down. I'm aware there's been talk, she said without preamble, about my personal life and specifically about my relationship with Ethan Cole. So let's address it directly instead of letting rumors fester. She could feel the tension in the room ratchet up. Ethan and I have been seeing each other outside of work. We've been having coffee, dinner, conversations. We're seeing where it goes. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm aware of the power differential, which is why I've already transferred departmental oversight to another executive, consulted with HR and our legal team, and ensured there's no direct reporting relationship or conflict of interest. Someone in the middle of the room shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa kept going. What we're not doing is having an inappropriate workplace relationship. What we're not doing is violating any company policy. And what is absolutely not happening is Ethan receiving special treatment or advancement because of our personal relationship. If anything, he's receiving the opposite: scrutiny, vandalism, and a hostile work environment created by people who have decided to believe the worst instead of minding their own business. She let that sink in. I'm not going to apologize for my personal life. I'm not going to end a relationship with someone I care about because other people are uncomfortable with it. But I'm going to make something very clear. Harassment of any employee, including Ethan, will not be tolerated. Vandalism is a crime and will be prosecuted. And if anyone has an actual legitimate concern about workplace conduct, you can take it to HR through proper channels instead of gossiping in break rooms and keying cars in parking garages. The room was completely silent. That's all. Get back to work. People filed out slowly, not quite making eye contact with her. Ethan stayed in the back until the room was mostly empty, then walked over to where she was gathering her notes. That was intense, he said. Too much? Probably just enough. He glanced around to make sure they were alone. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. People were treating you like you were some kind of gold digger or opportunist when the truth is you've turned down every opportunity I've tried to give you. Fair point. And they keyed your car. That's not okay. It's a car. It can be fixed. It's the principle. Vanessa felt some of her anger drain away, leaving her just tired. I don't want you to suffer because of me. Ethan reached out and took her hand, right there in the empty conference room where anyone could walk by and see. I'm not suffering. I'm dealing with some temporary bullshit from people whose opinions don't matter to me. There's a difference. Your car matters. My car has insurance. And honestly, the whole thing kind of proved your point from the gala, about how people in this world perform for each other instead of just being honest. He squeezed her hand. You were honest up there. You owned it. I respect that. Vanessa looked at their joined hands and thought about how far they'd come from that first conversation at the gala. How much had changed in just a couple of months. Lila's school has a winter concert next week, Ethan said abruptly. Wednesday night. She's been practicing this song about snowflakes for like 3 weeks, and I'm pretty sure I could recite it in my sleep at this point. That sounds nice? It's going to be chaos. 100 kids on risers, half of them picking their noses, very questionable pitch. But if you wanted to come, he stopped, seemed to reconsider. Actually, that's probably not a good idea. Too public, too much risk of people seeing us together and making it a thing. I want to come, Vanessa said. You sure? I'm sure. And she was. Completely sure in a way she hadn't been sure about much lately. If this is going to be something real, I need to be part of your actual life, not just stolen coffee hours on Thursday evenings. Ethan smiled. Wednesday at 7. Washington Elementary Gym. Dress code is casual and prepare for it to be approximately 900 degrees in there because the heating system is broken and they're using space heaters. I'll dress in layers. They stood there for another moment, still holding hands, before Ethan had to leave for a meeting and Vanessa had to go do actual CEO work. The week moved slowly. The gossip didn't completely die down, but it shifted. Vanessa's directness had taken some of the power out of it, made people less comfortable spreading rumors when the CEO had addressed the situation head-on. Brad from Acquisitions was noticeably quiet, possibly because security had identified him as a person of interest in the car vandalism, and he was currently suspended pending investigation. Wednesday night came cold and clear. Vanessa left the office at 6:30, practically the middle of the day by her old standards, and drove to Washington Elementary. The parking lot was packed with families, everyone bundling out of cars and heading into the gym entrance. Inside was exactly as chaotic as Ethan had promised. The gym had been transformed with paper snowflakes hanging from the ceiling and a makeshift stage at one end where risers were set up. Space heaters hummed in the corners, creating pockets of intense warmth in the otherwise drafty space. Parents filled the folding chairs and lined the walls, phones ready to record their children's performances. Vanessa scanned the crowd and found Ethan standing near the side, saving a seat. He waved when he saw her and she made her way through the press of people. You made it, he said. I said I would. I know, but he gestured at the chaos around them. This is pretty far from your normal Wednesday night. My normal Wednesday night is usually reviewing contracts and eating takeout at my desk. This is better. They sat down just as the lights dimmed and Dr. Martinez came out to welcome everyone. The program was exactly what Ethan had described. Adorable chaos. First graders singing about winter with varying degrees of accuracy. Second graders performing a play about animals preparing for hibernation, complete with homemade costumes that were falling apart in real time. Then it was Lila's grade. Vanessa watched as the third graders filed onto the risers, Lila in the second row wearing a purple dress that she'd probably insisted on. The music teacher counted them in, and they started singing a song about snowflakes being unique, and it was off-key and imperfect and completely wonderful. Lila spotted them in the audience, spotted Vanessa sitting next to her father, and her whole face lit up. She waved, forgetting for a moment that she was supposed to be singing, and Vanessa waved back. Something in her chest cracked open. This was what mattered, not board meetings or quarterly projections or building an empire. This, a child singing about snowflakes in an overheated elementary school gym, surrounded by parents who'd left work early and would go home to help with homework and read bedtime stories and do all the ordinary essential things that made up a life. When the concert ended and the gym dissolved into chaos again, Lila came running over and threw herself at Ethan, chattering about how she'd seen Vanessa and hadn't expected her to be there. Miss Vanessa, did you hear me sing? I didn't forget any of the words this time. I heard you. You were wonderful. Did you like my dress? Daddy said I could pick it out myself, and I chose purple because purple is the best color. Purple is definitely the best color, Vanessa agreed. Lila beamed, then looked between Vanessa and Ethan with the calculating expression of a child putting pieces together. Are you Daddy's friend? Ethan and Vanessa exchanged a look. They hadn't talked about how to handle this question, hadn't prepared for Lila asking directly. Yes, Vanessa said. I'm your dad's friend. Good. He needs more friends. He only has Uncle Nate and Aunt Rebecca, and they don't count because they're family. Lila turned to Ethan. Can we get ice cream now? You said if I didn't forget the words, we could get ice cream. I did say that, didn't I? Yes, so can we go? Can Miss Vanessa come too? Ethan looked at Vanessa. Ice cream? Fair warning, it's going to be the crappy chain place that she loves for reasons I don't understand, and she's going to order something with gummy bears in it. Gummy bears and ice cream sounds perfect, Vanessa said. They went to the crappy chain ice cream place, and Lila did indeed order something with gummy bears, and Vanessa got plain vanilla because she didn't trust any of the other options. They sat in a booth with sticky tables and talked about the concert and Lila's upcoming science project and whether penguins would make good pets. It was the best night Vanessa had had in years. Walking back to their cars afterward, Lila between them holding both their hands, Vanessa felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was what she'd been looking for without knowing how to name it. Thank you, she said to Ethan over Lila's head, for inviting me tonight. Thank you for coming. His voice was soft. It meant a lot, to both of us. They reached Vanessa's car first. Lila gave her a sticky hug goodbye, and then it was just Ethan and Vanessa standing in the parking lot while Lila climbed into the back seat of Ethan's car. This is complicated, Ethan said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. But he was smiling. Also, Lila's going to have questions now, about why you're around, about what you mean to me. What do I mean to you? Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle. I don't know yet. Something important, I think. Something that scares me because I haven't let anyone be important since Sarah died. I'm scared too. Good. Means we're both paying attention. He kissed her then, quick and soft, before stepping back. I'll see you Thursday? He asked. Thursday? Vanessa confirmed. She drove home with the taste of him still on her lips, and the image of Lila's happy face burned into her memory. Her phone was full of missed calls and texts, some crisis at the office, probably, something that would have consumed her entire evening 6 months ago. She ignored all of it. For the first time in her adult life, Vanessa Hale went home early on a Wednesday night and went to bed thinking about snowflake songs and sticky ice cream booths, and a man who'd taught her that the best things in life had nothing to do with success. December arrived with the kind of cold that made Chicago feel personal in its cruelty, wind cutting through even the most expensive coats. Vanessa had started keeping a second set of warmer clothes at the office for Thursday afternoons at Washington Elementary because showing up in designer business wear to finger paint with 7-year-olds had stopped making sense weeks ago. She was in her office reviewing the Singapore expansion proposal when Jennifer knocked and entered looking more nervous than usual. There's someone here to see you, says it's urgent. Who? David Kellner, from the board. Vanessa's stomach tightened. David was the board member most likely to cause problems, the one who'd opposed her original appointment as CEO 5 years ago and had been looking for reasons to undermine her ever since. He didn't just show up unannounced. Send him in. David entered like he owned the place, which in a technical sense he partly did as the largest individual shareholder after Vanessa herself. He was 60, silver-haired, and had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no in his entire life. Vanessa, we need to talk. Good morning to you too, David. Please, have a seat. He sat, and Vanessa noticed he'd brought a folder with him. Never a good sign. I'll get straight to it, David said. There are concerns among certain board members about your recent behavior and how it's affecting the company. What concerns specifically? Your relationship with a subordinate employee, the public spectacle you made addressing it, your increasingly erratic schedule, leaving early, missing meetings, delegating responsibilities that should be yours. He opened the folder and pulled out what looked like a timeline. In the last 6 weeks, you've left the office before 5 p.m. 12 times. You've rescheduled or missed 18 meetings. You've been seen publicly with Ethan Cole at locations that could be photographed and used to embarrass the company. Vanessa kept her expression neutral, even as anger built in her chest. I've rescheduled meetings, yes. I haven't missed any that were critical, and all my delegated work has been handled competently by my senior team. As for my relationship with Ethan, I've already addressed that with HR and legal. There's no policy violation. This isn't about policy. This is about perception and leadership. David leaned forward. You're 30 years old and you've done remarkable things with this company, but you're also showing signs of losing focus, of prioritizing personal matters over professional responsibilities. The board needs to know that you're still committed to Hailtech's success. I'm absolutely committed, then prove it. The Singapore expansion is entering a critical phase. We need you focused, present, willing to do whatever it takes to make it successful. That means long hours, international travel, complete dedication. He paused. It also means ending distractions, including your relationship with this analyst. The office felt very cold suddenly. You're asking me to choose between my personal life and my job. I'm asking you to remember what you built here and what you stand to lose if you let yourself get derailed by something that's ultimately irrelevant to your success. Irrelevant. Vanessa heard her own voice go flat and dangerous. You think my personal happiness is irrelevant. I think your personal happiness is secondary to your professional obligations. You made a commitment to this company, to the board, to the shareholders. That commitment requires sacrifice. I've been sacrificing for 10 years, David. I've given everything to this company. My 20s, my relationships, my health, any semblance of a life outside these walls. And you know what I've learned? That sacrifice doesn't actually mean anything if you wake up at 30 having achieved everything you're supposed to want and feeling completely empty. David's expression hardened. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This kind of emotional reasoning instead of strategic thinking. If you can't separate your personal feelings from business decisions, get out of my office. Excuse me? I said, get out. This conversation is over. Vanessa stood, her hands flat on the desk. You don't get to come in here and tell me how to live my life. You don't get to decide what's relevant to my success or my happiness. And you definitely don't get to threaten me in my own office. I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you that if you continue down this path, there will be consequences. The board has options. Then the board should exercise those options. Call a vote. Try to remove me. See how that goes. Vanessa moved around the desk, walking toward the door. But right now, you need to leave, because I have work to do, and it doesn't involve listening to a man who's been divorced 3 times lecture me about personal priorities. David stood slowly, his face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He left, and Vanessa closed the door behind him, then leaned against it, feeling like she might throw up. Her hands were shaking. She'd just essentially told a major board member to go to hell, which was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd done in her career. Her phone rang. Claire. Hey, Vanessa said, her voice not quite steady. Are you okay? You sound weird. I just had a fight with a board member. Told him to get out of my office. Holy shit, what happened? Vanessa told her the whole thing. David's ultimatum about ending things with Ethan, the threat about board action, her own response that had probably been professional suicide. Good for you, Claire said when she finished. Good for me? Claire, I might have just destroyed my career. Or you might have finally stood up for something that actually matters. Claire's voice was firm. You've been miserable for years, Vanessa. You've been achieving and succeeding and building this empire while slowly dying inside. And now you've found someone who makes you feel alive again, and some entitled board member thinks he can tell you to give that up? Screw him. It's not that simple. It really is. Either this company respects you enough to let you have a personal life, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, maybe it's not worth what you've been giving it. Vanessa thought about that, about the 10 years she'd poured into Hailtech, about the version of herself who'd stood at the gala 2 months ago feeling hollow despite all her success, about Ethan and Lila and Thursday afternoons, and feeling like she was finally building something real. I'm scared, she admitted. Of course you are. But the question isn't whether you're scared, it's what you're going to do about it. After they hung up, Vanessa sat at her desk for a long time, thinking. Then she pulled up her calendar and did something radical. She cleared her schedule for the day. All of it. Every meeting, every call, every obligation. She sent an email to her senior team delegating the critical items and postponing everything else. And then she left the office at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, which she was pretty sure she'd never done in her entire career. She drove to Washington Elementary, even though it wasn't Thursday, even though she had no reason to be there. She parked across the street and waited. 3:15, the doors opened and kids poured out. Parents gathered. And then Ethan appeared, right on schedule, hands in his pockets, waiting. Lila ran to him like she always did, backpack bouncing, and Ethan caught her and lifted her up. Vanessa watched them start to walk away, this daily ritual that had become the anchor of both their lives. And then she got out of her car and crossed the street. "Ethan!" He turned, surprised, and Lila's face lit up when she saw Vanessa. "Miss Vanessa! It's not Thursday!" "I know, Vanessa stopped in front of them, suddenly unsure. "Can we talk? All three of us?" Ethan studied her face, seemed to see something there that made him nod. "There's a park near here. We usually stop there on nice days. Well, nice-ish days. Today's pretty cold, but the park sounds perfect." They walked the 3 blocks together, Lila chattering about her day, something about a science experiment with vinegar and baking soda that had gone wrong. The park was small, just a playground, and some benches, mostly empty in the December cold. Lila ran for the swings immediately, and Ethan and Vanessa sat on a bench where they could watch her. "What happened?" Ethan asked quietly. "Board member came to my office today. Told me I needed to end things with you to prove I was still committed to the company." She felt Ethan go tense beside her. "What did you say?" "I told him to get out of my office." "Vanessa, I know. It was probably stupid. It might cost me everything I've built, but I couldn't." She stopped, started again. "I spent my whole life being told that success meant sacrifice, that if I wanted to build something great, I had to give up everything else. Personal relationships, free time, any kind of life outside of work. And I bought into that. I sacrificed and achieved and succeeded, and I was miserable." Lila was pumping her legs on the swing, going higher, her laugh carrying across the cold air. "Then I met you," Vanessa continued, "and you were this person who'd chosen differently, who decided that being present for your daughter mattered more than career advancement or money or any of the things I'd been taught to value. And at first I thought I just wanted what you had. The purpose, the connection, the sense that your life meant something. But it's not that. It's you, specifically you, and Lila. And this," she gestured at the park, "at this ordinary Tuesday afternoon. This matters more to me than any board meeting or expansion deal or quarterly projection." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "You're sure? Because if you're going to resent this choice later, if you're going to wake up in 5 years and regret giving up your career for..." "I'm not giving up my career. I'm refusing to let my career be my entire life." Vanessa turned to face him. "I'm good at what I do, Ethan. I built Hail Tech from nothing, and I can keep building it. But I can also leave at 5 p.m. sometimes. I can have Thursday afternoons at the art room. I can come to winter concerts and get ice cream after and have something in my life besides work. The board might not see it that way. Then the board can vote me out, and if they do, I'll figure out what comes next. But I'm not ending this because some entitled man thinks my personal life is a distraction." "Daddy!" Lila called from the swings. "Push me!" Ethan stood and went to push her, and Vanessa watched them together. Father and daughter, this unit that had existed for years before she came along. She was asking to be part of that, she realized, asking to be led into something precious and complicated and not at all simple. When Ethan came back to the bench, there was something different in his expression. "I need to tell you something," he said. "About Sarah. About the promise I made." "Okay." "When she was dying, she made me promise 2 things. The first was that I'd take care of Lila, that I'd be there for her, that I'd show up every day, that she'd never doubt she was loved." His voice had gone rough. "The second was that I'd let myself be happy again, that I wouldn't turn our marriage into a shrine and refuse to live because she was gone." Vanessa felt her throat tighten. "I kept the first promise," Ethan continued, "but I didn't keep the second one. I told myself it was about Lila, about being a good father, but really I was just scared. Scared of losing someone again. Scared of letting Lila get attached to someone who might leave. Scared of wanting something and having it taken away. Ethan, let me finish. He took her hand. You scare me. This scares me. Not because it's wrong, but because it matters. Because if I let you in, if I let us be something real, I'm risking everything I've been protecting for the last 4 years. But I'm also finally keeping that second promise, the one about letting myself be happy. Lila had abandoned the swings and was now collecting fallen leaves, carefully examining each one before deciding whether to keep it. I'm scared too, Vanessa said. I don't know how to be in a relationship. I don't know how to be part of a family. I'll probably screw it up constantly. Probably? That's not very reassuring. I'm not here to reassure you. I'm here to tell you the truth. Ethan squeezed her hand. The truth is, this is complicated and messy, and there are no guarantees. The truth is, Lila might struggle with having someone new in her life. The truth is, your board might make good on their threat, and you might end up regretting this choice. But the truth is also that I'm falling for you, and I think you might be falling for me, and maybe that's worth the risk. I am, Vanessa said, falling for you, definitely falling for you. Good, because I already told Lila that you're not just my friend. Vanessa's heart stopped. You what? Last week, she asked directly if you were my girlfriend, and I couldn't lie to her. He smiled slightly. She wanted to know if that meant you'd come over more, and if you'd help her make cookies sometime, and if you knew that her favorite color was purple, because that's apparently important information. What did you say? I said yes to all of it, if you wanted to. I want to, Vanessa said immediately. I want all of it. The coming over, the cookies, the purple things. I want... She stopped, overwhelmed by how much she wanted. I want Thursday afternoons and winter concerts and regular Tuesday afternoons at the park. I want to be part of this. Of your life. Of Lila's life. However that looks. Ethan leaned over and kissed her, gentle and thorough, and Vanessa felt something in her chest unlock completely. Miss Vanessa! Lila was running toward them, hands full of leaves. Look what I found! They're all different shapes! She climbed onto the bench between them, spreading out her leaf collection with serious concentration. Ethan and Vanessa looked at each other over her head, and Vanessa thought about David's ultimatum, about choosing between success and happiness, as if they were mutually exclusive. She'd spent 10 years choosing success. Maybe it was time to choose differently. The next week was difficult. David had apparently reported their conversation to other board members, and Vanessa spent 3 days in emergency meetings explaining her position, defending her choices, trying to make people understand that wanting a life outside of work didn't make her less committed to the company. Some of them got it. Some of them didn't. And some of them, like David, were actively working to undermine her. Friday afternoon, Vanessa sat in her office reviewing notes from the latest board call when Jennifer knocked. There's a situation, Jennifer said. What kind of situation? Press situation. Someone leaked to TechCrunch about your relationship with Ethan and the board concerns. There's an article going live in an hour. Vanessa's stomach dropped. Let me see it. Jennifer handed over her tablet with the draft article pulled up. The headline was designed for maximum damage. Hail Tech CEO's inappropriate relationship raises questions about leadership. The article itself was worse. It painted Vanessa as a billionaire who'd abused her power to pursue a subordinate employee. It questioned her judgment, her leadership, her ability to separate personal and professional obligations. It made Ethan sound like either a victim of harassment or an opportunist sleeping his way to advancement. It was character assassination disguised as journalism. Who leaked this? Vanessa asked, though she already knew the answer. Unclear, but the quotes are from anonymous board sources, which probably means, David, this is David trying to force my hand. What are you going to do? Vanessa looked at the article, at the careful manipulation of facts to create a narrative that had nothing to do with reality. She thought about Ethan, about how this would affect him, about Lila, who might have to hear people talk about her father in ways that weren't fair or true. She could fight this. Issue a statement, threaten legal action, try to bury the story through the usual corporate channels, Or she could tell the truth. Get me a call with TechCrunch, she said. Not their source. The editor-in-chief. Tell them I want to give them the real story. Are you sure that's... Do it, Jennifer. An hour later, Vanessa was on the phone with Amanda Chen, TechCrunch's editor-in-chief, explaining why their article was wrong. It's not an inappropriate relationship, Vanessa said. It's two adults who met at a company event, realized they had a connection, and started dating. I've followed every company policy, consulted with HR and legal, removed any direct reporting relationship. There's no abuse of power. There's no harassment. There's just two people trying to figure out if they can build something real together. But the power differential is something I'm aware of and have addressed. Ethan has never received special treatment. If anything, he's faced increased scrutiny and actual harassment from other employees because of our relationship. Vanessa took a breath. And yes, I've been leaving work earlier than I used to. I've been rescheduling meetings and delegating more. Because I realized that spending 80 hours a week at the office was destroying me, and that maybe being a good CEO doesn't mean sacrificing every other aspect of my life. That's not the story our source is telling. Your source is a board member who's been trying to undermine me for years and sees this as an opportunity. Ask yourself why he's leaking this anonymously instead of going on record. Ask yourself whether a man who's been divorced 3 times is really the authority on appropriate relationships. Amanda was quiet for a moment. You're asking me not to run the story. I'm asking you to run the true story. Talk to Ethan. Talk to HR. Talk to other employees who've seen me actually show up and do the work while also trying to have a personal life. Don't let one bitter board member control the narrative. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. The article didn't run, at least not the version David had leaked. Instead, TechCrunch published a different piece on Monday morning. HailTech CEO pushes back against work-life balance. Critics. It was fair. It included David's concerns, but also Vanessa's response, HR's confirmation that all policies had been followed, and even a quote from Marcus about how Vanessa's leadership hadn't faltered despite her changed schedule. It painted the situation not as a scandal, but as a broader question about expectations for women in leadership positions. Vanessa read it 3 times, hardly believing they'd actually given her a fair shake. Her phone rang. Claire. Have you seen it? I've seen it. You sound surprised. I am surprised. I don't know what I thought, that telling the truth wouldn't be enough. Sometimes it is, Claire said. Sometimes you just have to trust that people can handle reality instead of trying to control the narrative. Vanessa thought about that after they hung up, about truth versus control, about spending 10 years trying to be perfect instead of just being honest. The board meeting was scheduled for Wednesday. Vanessa prepared like she was going to war, rehearsing her arguments, anticipating every objection, ready to defend every choice she'd made. But when she walked into the boardroom, she decided to try something different. Before we start, she said, I want to say something. I've spent the last 10 years of my life building this company. I've sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of balance, all in service of making HailTech successful. And we've been incredibly successful. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the fact that I'm a person, not just a CEO. That I have a right to personal happiness. That wanting a life outside this building doesn't make me less committed or less capable. David opened his mouth to speak, but Vanessa held up a hand. I'm not done. I'm in a relationship with Ethan Cole. I'm not apologizing for it, and I'm not ending it. I followed every policy, addressed every conflict of interest, and ensured that my personal life doesn't interfere with my professional responsibilities. If the board doesn't think I can manage both, then I'll resign. But I won't give up my personal life to prove I'm a good CEO. That's not the trade I'm willing to make anymore. The room was silent. So vote, Vanessa said. Vote on whether you still have confidence in my leadership, but vote on the real question, which is whether you believe I can be both a successful CEO and a complete human being, because that's what I'm trying to be. The vote took 20 minutes. When the results came back, Vanessa had won. Not unanimously. David and 2 others had voted against her, but decisively enough that her position was secure. She walked out of that boardroom feeling lighter than she had in months. That afternoon, instead of staying late to celebrate or strategize or do any of the things she would have done before, Vanessa left at 4:30 and drove to Washington Elementary. She waited across the street, and when school let out and Lila came running to meet Ethan, Vanessa crossed over to join them. "Miss Vanessa!" Lila grabbed her hand immediately, no hesitation, just acceptance. "Are you coming over today?" Vanessa looked at Ethan, asking the question silently. He smiled and nodded. "Yeah," Vanessa said. "I'm coming over today." They walked to Ethan's car together, the three of them, Lila in the middle holding both their hands. It was cold and getting dark early the way it did in Chicago in December, but Vanessa felt warm. Ethan's house was small, a two-bedroom bungalow in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was slowly improving. Inside was lived in and comfortable, nothing like Vanessa's designer penthouse. There were toys on the floor, Lila's artwork covering the refrigerator, dishes in the sink from breakfast. It was perfect. "Sorry about the mess," Ethan said, moving to pick up some of the toys. "Don't apologize. This is a home, an actual home." Lila immediately dragged Vanessa to her room to show her the important things. Her stuffed animals, her collection of rocks from the park, the nightlight she still slept with. Vanessa sat on the floor and listened to a 6-year-old's tour of her world, and it felt more important than any board meeting she'd ever attended. They made dinner together, simple pasta that Lila helped with, and ate at a small table in the kitchen. Afterward, Lila insisted on showing Vanessa her favorite movie, which was apparently about talking cars and had a plot that made no sense, but that Lila could recite word for word. Halfway through, Lila climbed into Vanessa's lap without asking, just settled there like it was the most natural thing in the world. Vanessa froze for a moment, not sure what to do, and then she wrapped her arms around this small person and felt something slot into place. This was what she'd been missing. Not success or achievement or empire building, just this. Connection, purpose, love that didn't have to be earned. When the movie ended, it was bedtime. Ethan took Lila to brush her teeth, and Vanessa stayed in the living room looking at the photos on the wall. Lots of Lila at different ages. A few of Ethan and a woman who must have been Sarah, both of them young and happy. A family that had existed and then been broken and was now rebuilding into something new. "She wants you to say goodnight," Ethan said, appearing in the doorway. Vanessa went to Lila's room where the little girl was already in bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and with every light in the room on. "Good night, Lila," Vanessa said. "Good night, Miss Vanessa." Lila yawned. "Are you going to come over again?" "If you want me to." "I want you to. You can help me with my science project. It's about the solar system and I need to make Saturn's rings out of something, but I don't know what. I'll help you figure it out." "Okay. Good night." Vanessa went back to the living room and found Ethan standing by the window, looking out at the dark street. "She likes you," he said. "I like her too. Vanessa searched for the right word. "She's remarkable. You're doing an amazing job with her." "Most days I'm just trying not to screw it up." Ethan turned to face her. "But having you here, it feels right. Like maybe we can actually do this." "Do what?" "Build something. The three of us. Something that's not me trying to be both parents and failing at it, and not you trying to fill a void in your life with someone else's family. Just us. Actually us." Vanessa crossed the room and took his hands. "I want that. More than I've wanted anything in a very long time. That even though it's messy and complicated and there are no guarantees, especially because of that." She smiled. "Turns out, I'm tired of things that are perfect and controlled and empty. I want messy and complicated and real." Ethan kissed her, and it felt different than before, like a promise instead of a question. They stood there in his small living room, holding each other while Lila slept in the next room, and Vanessa thought about the path that had led her here, the years of achievement that had felt hollow, the gala where she'd met a man who'd challenged everything she thought she knew about success, the slow, difficult process of learning what actually mattered. She hadn't found the answer in Ethan's life or in some idealized version of what he represented. She'd found it by building her own version, by showing up at art class and having lunch with her sister and standing up to board members who thought personal happiness was a distraction. But she'd also found it here, in this small house, with this man who'd chosen his daughter over his career and this little girl who trusted her enough to climb into her lap. The next few months weren't perfect. Vanessa still struggled with leaving work at reasonable hours. Lila still had nightmares sometimes about losing her father. The office gossip didn't completely die down, and David continued to make her professional life difficult when he could. But Vanessa kept showing up, for art class on Thursdays, for dinner at Ethan's house on Tuesday and Friday nights, for weekend trips to the museum and the park, and once, memorably, to a trampoline place that had left all three of them exhausted and laughing. She hired a new COO to handle some of the day-to-day operations she'd been micromanaging for years. She started actually using her senior team instead of trying to do everything herself. She learned that delegating wasn't failure, it was trust, and slowly, week by week, she built a life that looked nothing like the one she'd planned, but felt infinitely better. One night in late February, after Lila had gone to bed and Vanessa and Ethan were sitting on his couch with mugs of tea, Ethan said something that stopped her cold. "Lila asked me yesterday if you were going to be her mom." Vanessa nearly dropped her mug. "She what?" "She's been thinking about it, apparently, about what it means that you're around all the time, about whether you're going to stay." Ethan was watching her carefully. "I told her we were still figuring things out, but that you weren't going anywhere." "What did she say?" "She said good, because she liked having you here. And then she asked if that meant we were a family now." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I thought maybe we were. If that's what you wanted too." Vanessa stopped, overwhelmed by how much she wanted exactly that. "Yes, that's what I want." Ethan set down his mug and took her hands. "I'm not asking you to be her mother. Sarah was her mother, and that's always going to be true. But I'm asking if you want to be part of this, of us. Not as a replacement for what we lost, but as something new we're building. I want to be part of it. I want all of it. Even the messy parts, the hard parts. The nights when Lila cries for her mom, and there's nothing we can do but hold her, the awkward conversations with school parents who don't know how to categorize us, the reality that this is never going to be simple." "Especially those parts," Vanessa said. "Because that's real, that's honest, and I'm so tired of things that look perfect from the outside but feel empty inside." They sat there holding hands, and Vanessa thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in the rain at her own party, feeling successful and miserable and completely alone. That woman would never have believed this was possible, that she could have both the career and the life, that she could be a CEO and also be part of a family, that choosing love didn't mean giving up everything else. But here she was, building something real with a man who understood that showing up mattered more than advancement, and a little girl who'd decided Vanessa was worth keeping. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. March brought warmer weather and Washington Elementary's spring art show. Vanessa had helped organize it, using some of her connections to get local businesses to sponsor materials and refreshments. Lila had 3 pieces in the show, all featuring purple prominently, including one that was labeled My Family, and showed 3 stick figures holding hands. When Vanessa saw it, she had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry. The show was crowded. Parents and grandparents and siblings all crammed into the gymnasium to celebrate young artists. Vanessa stood with Ethan and his sister Rebecca, watching Lila explain her solar system project to anyone who would listen. "She's really attached to you," Rebecca said quietly. "I'm really attached to her too." "Good." Rebecca studied Vanessa with the frank assessment of someone who'd earned the right through years of helping Ethan raise Lila. "Because if you hurt either of them, I will make your life hell, billionaire CEO or not." "Understood. But I don't think you will. I think you actually get what you have here." "I do," Vanessa said. "Took me a while, but I do." That night, after the art show, they went back to Ethan's house and ordered pizza. Lila fell asleep on the couch before finishing her second slice, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Ethan carried her to bed while Vanessa cleaned up the pizza boxes. When he came back, he was holding something small in his hand. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to a small desk in the corner of his bedroom and opened a drawer. Inside was a photo album, old and well-loved. He opened it to the first page, which showed Sarah holding newborn Lila, both of them looking exhausted and happy. "I put this away after she died," Ethan said. "Couldn't look at it without falling apart. But I got it out last week because I wanted to remember her without it destroying me, and I wanted—" He paused. "I wanted you to see her, to know her, even though you never met. They sat on the bed and went through the album together. Sarah as a young woman, Sarah and Ethan's wedding, Sarah pregnant, Sarah with baby Lila, Sarah sick but still smiling. She would have liked you, Ethan said when they reached the last page. She valued honesty and people who showed up and weren't afraid to be real. You would have gotten along. I wish I could have known her. Me too, but I'm glad you're here now. I'm glad you're part of what comes next. They sat there in comfortable silence, and Vanessa understood that this was part of it too. Part of loving Ethan meant loving the memory of Sarah, meant understanding that the past informed the present without controlling it. A week later, Vanessa had lunch with Claire and told her everything. About the art show, about the photo album, about feeling like she'd finally found her place. You seem happy, Claire observed. I am happy. Genuinely, actually happy in a way I've never been before. Even with work being complicated. Work is always going to be complicated, but it's not my whole life anymore. It's just the thing I do for 40 or 50 hours a week. Vanessa smiled. I'm still good at it. I'm still building the company and making good decisions and leading effectively. I'm just also leaving at 5:30 to have dinner with Ethan and Lila, and that's okay. More than okay, it's healthy. It feels revolutionary, Claire laughed. That's because you spent 10 years being toxic about work. Anything less than total obsession probably feels weird. Fair point. They finished lunch and walked along the river, and Vanessa thought about how much had changed in 6 months. She had a sister again, she had a partner, she had a little girl who'd made her a Mother's Day card in art class, even though Mother's Day was still 2 months away. She had a life. One evening in early April, Vanessa was at Ethan's house helping Lila with homework when Lila looked up from her math worksheet and asked, "Are you going to live here?" The question hung in the air. Ethan, who'd been cooking dinner, went very still. Vanessa looked at Ethan, who looked back at her. Would you want me to live here? Yes, Lila said immediately. Then you could be here all the time, and you could help me with homework every day instead of just sometimes. And we could watch movies together, and… Lila, Ethan interrupted gently. That's a big question. Miss Vanessa and I need to talk about it. But do you want her to live here? Yeah, kiddo, I do. Lila looked at Vanessa expectantly. I want that too, Vanessa heard herself say. But we need to figure out how to do it right. Make sure it works for everyone. It will work, Lila said with the confidence of childhood, because we're a family. Later, after Lila was in bed, Vanessa and Ethan sat on the back porch looking at the small yard with its struggling tree. Did you mean it? Ethan asked. About moving in. Did you? I asked first. Vanessa thought about her penthouse, the empty marble surfaces and the designer furniture and the view that had never felt like home. My lease is up in June. I could not renew it. See what happens. That's not really an answer. Yes, Vanessa said. I meant it. I want to live here with you and Lila. I want this to be my home. Ethan reached for her hand. It's a small house, nothing like what you're used to. I don't want what I'm used to. I want this. I want Saturday morning pancakes and helping with homework and fighting over bathroom time. I want the messy, normal, beautiful reality of actually living with people I love. You love us? I love you, both of you. So much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means I'm finally choosing something that matters instead of something that looks impressive. She squeezed his hand. Is that okay? That I love you? It's more than okay. Because I love you too. They sat there in the dark, holding hands, and Vanessa thought about the path that had led here. How sometimes the things that looked like failure from the outside were actually the first steps toward something real. How letting go of perfect could open space for good. How showing up day after day was worth more than any achievement. June came warm and humid, and Vanessa moved out of her penthouse and into Ethan's small house. It was chaos, trying to fit her things into his space, figuring out storage, dealing with Lila's initial excitement giving way to territorial anxiety about her routines being disrupted. It was imperfect and difficult, and absolutely right. One Saturday morning in July, Vanessa woke up to sunlight streaming through curtains that weren't blackout shades, to the sound of Lila singing in the next room, to Ethan's arm across her waist. She lay there for a moment, cataloging the differences between this and every other Saturday morning of her adult life. The house was small. The mattress wasn't as good as her old one. She could hear the neighbor's dog barking, and she'd never been happier. She got up and found Lila and Ethan in the kitchen, attempting to make pancakes. There was batter on the counter, on the floor, somehow on the ceiling. "Morning," Ethan said, looking slightly panicked. "We were trying to surprise you with breakfast, but it's going not great. Can I help?" "Please." They made pancakes together, the three of them, and they were lumpy and some of them were burned, but they tasted perfect. They ate at the small kitchen table, Lila chattering about her friend's birthday party next week, Ethan reading something on his phone about the Cubs, Vanessa just soaking it all in. This was her life now. Not board meetings and quarterly projections, not empty penthouses and hollow achievement. This, family, home, love. After breakfast, they went to the park. The same small park where Vanessa had first told Ethan she was falling for him. Lila ran ahead to the swings, and Vanessa and Ethan walked slowly, hands linked. "I have something to tell you," Ethan said. "Should I be worried?" "No, at least I hope not." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "I got offered a job. Director level, big salary increase. They want me to start in September." Vanessa felt her stomach drop. "Where?" "Here. At Hale Tech, actually. Different department, no reporting to you, completely clean. They need someone to build out a new risk assessment division." He was watching her carefully. "I told them I'd think about it." "What's there to think about?" "Whether it's the right move, whether I want to take on more responsibility, whether it would mess up our routine." He paused. "Whether you think I should take it." Vanessa looked at him. This man who taught her that success meant showing up, that purpose came from choosing what mattered, that some promises were worth keeping even when they were hard. "I think you should do whatever feels right for you and Lila," she said. "Not what some board member thinks you should do, not what looks good on paper. What actually feels right. That's not helpful." "Sure it is. You're the one who taught me about should versus is. So what is true? What do you actually want?" Ethan thought about it. "I want to use my talents at a higher level. I want to build something that matters. But I also want to leave at 5:30 to have dinner with my daughter. And I want to coach Lila's soccer team in the fall. And I want Saturday mornings like this, where we make terrible pancakes and go to the park and just exist together." "Can you do both?" "I think so. If the company actually means it about work-life balance, if they let me set boundaries and keep them, then try it. And if it doesn't work, you know what to do. Walk away?" "Walk away." Vanessa smiled. "You taught me that it's okay to choose life over career. Maybe it's time you learned that it's also okay to choose both, as long as both is actually sustainable." Ethan kissed her right there in the park, not caring who saw, and Vanessa wrapped her arms around him and thought about how far they'd both come. Lila came running over, demanding they push her on the swings, and they spent the rest of the morning at the park. Just the three of them. This family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances, and the willingness to choose love over fear. That night, after Lila was asleep, Vanessa and Ethan sat in the backyard and looked up at the stars. The tree was a little bigger now than when Vanessa had first seen it. Still small, still growing, but getting stronger. "I love you," Ethan said quietly. "I love you too. And I love that you're here, that you chose this. I love that you let me choose it." Vanessa leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for showing me what actually matters. Thank you for showing me that I could still choose happiness after Sarah, that I didn't have to live my whole life in that promise, even if I keep the spirit of it." They sat there in comfortable silence, and Vanessa thought about the woman she'd been at the gala 7 months ago. Standing in the rain, feeling successful and empty, wondering if there was more to life than achievement. She'd found the answer, not in some dramatic revelation, but in small moments accumulated over time. Thursday art classes, Saturday morning pancakes, a little girl's hand in hers, a man who'd chosen love over ambition and shown her how to do the same. The answer was yes. There was more to life than achievement. There was this: connection, purpose, home. And it was more than enough. It was everything.